Okay, great. Thank you very much. Thanks to LTV. Good afternoon. My name is Kathleen Cunningham. Welcome to the December 15th, 2022 meeting of the Architectural Review Board. It's our last meeting of the year. I want to extend a heartfelt thanks to my board members and the planning department and our wonderful administrative assistant, Julie Akala, for all the hard work they've been doing this year. Our ARB is really we're pulling things together in a different way, and it's working much better. So I want to thank everyone for their support. I've been driving everyone pretty hard, so I just wanted to make note of that. Toward a better understanding of what our responsibilities are, I'm just going to read a little bit about the overlay, agricultural overlay district, and the basic applicability of overlay districts and the zoning for overlay districts, which trumps the regular zoning code. So I'm going to start by saying any lot or land included in any overlay district established hereunder shall continue to be included, as well as in the use district into which it has been placed pursuant to Article 2 and Article 12 hereof, except to the extent that one or more regulations of said use district is suspended or overridden by the specific language of an applicable overlay district regulation. All use district regulations affecting the use of the lot or land and the use of buildings and structures and other activities thereon shall continue to apply. Where an applicable use district regulation and an applicable overlay district regulation address the same subject matter, and one does not by its terms override or supersede the other, the regulation imposing the greater restriction on the use of the affected building, structure, lot, or land shall control. So I think that's helpful for our board to know, as well as for our community. Architectural review in and adjacent to districts on any property wholly or partly in the agricultural overlay district, or on any property fronting on the boundary line of such district, or lying directly across any private or public street or right of way which borders such district. The Architectural Review Board shall have jurisdiction over buildings, structures, signs, and exteriors as provided in Article 7 of this chapter. And then just as a refresher, the Ag Overlay District, we are charged very specifically to reasonably control and extent possible prevent the unnecessary loss of those currently open lands within the town containing large and contiguous areas of prime agricultural soils. The economic, social, and aesthetic benefits which can be obtained for all citizens by limiting loss of such areas are well documented and have inspired a host of governmental programs designed with varying degrees of success to achieve this result. It goes on to say the town's expended lots of money to preserve farm acreage, and we also have an obligation to exercise authority to reasonably regulate the subdivision and development of this land to further those same purposes while honoring the legitimate interests of farmers and other farmland owners. Additionally, the assurance of harmony is a big piece of that review, and a scale of proposed alterations, and the maintenance of character, importance of historic, architectural, or other features to the significance to the property, and the visual compatibility of any proposed alteration, addition, or new construction. So that is how we are going to begin tonight. I think I've hit on everything I wanted to. David, did I miss anything, do you think?
No.
Okay, thank you. All right, so we are going to forego the minutes, and we don't have minutes to approve today, so we're going to get right into our agenda. I want to apologize at the beginning. I have to leave here by 5:45, so if we're not done, our Vice Chair, Esperanza Leon, will steer the ship home. Okay, so our first application is Brad Schiff and Jen Roth, Suffolk County Tax Map number 800-80-2-2. This is mine, and I see that Mr. Pollock and Mr. Darrell are here. Why can't I find my notes now? Good evening.
Good afternoon.
Afternoon, indeed. It is afternoon. How have you been?
Doing well.
Good.
So this matter was, we had been here for the hearing on the last date, and I think the board had been polled, and, the board had.
I'm sorry, I couldn't hear what you just said.
The board had been polled at that time and mostly had approved the actual proposed structure on the property. And we had a lot of conversation and discussion about filing a covenant on the property.
Right.
So in the interim, since the hearing date, I did file with the board and the board's attorney a proposed covenant, which the applicant would like to put forward as part of its file for the board to consider as part of its approval process, which would be the 50-foot scenic easement along the road frontage.
Oh, perfect. That's exactly what we need to see, Will.
But the most recent,
There's a more recent one.
There's a more recent one?
I have a hard copy of it, but
Was it submitted electronically? Oh, okay. We don't seem to have that one. Just to be clear, thank you, Mr. Darrell, and thank you to your clients for offering this easement. But the ARB is not, we cannot base our approval on, it's not a quid pro quo. So
understood. And what was,
well, it's kind of sounded like that when you said it. So I'm sure you know that, but maybe I heard it wrong. But
no, so I think the
I'm
board
just
had approved
being-
the structure. The applicant had, there was some discussion about a covenant or
Right.
scenic easement, and the applicant did propose
right.
such a covenant for the board
Right.
to consider. It's not
Perfect.
wasn't a condition or a requirement
Great.
of an approval of the
Right.
board.
We know that.
but
I just,
we
it
put
just,
forward so
I
that
may have misheard it, but it
Okay.
felt like it was sort of tied to the approval, which it can't be
Understood.
very
Correct.
specifically. And all we can do is make a recommendation to the town board to accept or reject this. So,
And since, as the board recalls, there was actually a building permit that had been issued on this
Right.
property initially.
right.
So in an effort to sort of get back onto, track with that construction, we would love to resolve this hearing so that we could close the hearing. And with the understanding that if the board would so like us to, we would be submitting the proposed covenant that I've given you a copy of to the
Right.
town board for their ultimate approval
Right.
of
Right.
such.
Just so we're using the same terminology, this isn't actually a hearing. This is more like a work session.
No, the last hearing, right? 'Cause
Right. The last
board-
time we heard your proposal, which isn't a public hearing in the strict sense. So, okay. So I would like to say that I've been laboring over whether this, how this should look, which is basically what our input at this point in the process should be. When it was first proposed to us, it was tapered. You saw that original proposal from 50 feet to, I think, 25 feet at the corner of Old Stone and Shipyard. But, and in some research, and council helped me with this, this land has gone from being 100% cleared to meadowland to, random growth of cedar trees that are indigenous from time to time. So over the last 100 years, I suspect it was empty, then full, then empty, then full. But the guidance that we've had from the Springs Historic District is to try to keep the more of a pasture land, more of an open feel there. So to the degree that I think you could leave the larger growth trees, I think that would be great. But their proposal to mow it twice a year seems like a good idea. And just in terms of your landscaping plan, that's separate from the easement. But I think just in terms of the easement, I would propose to leave the large growth trees that are there. And then mow it, as you're saying, as you recommended. That was your recommendation, if I'm
That's what
remembering
we
correctly.
proposed. correct?
Yes, twice a year. Yeah. So our board needs to have a discussion about that before, we haven't been able to do this and we need to do it in a public venue. So that's what we're doing tonight. So does anybody have any input on this? Can you just show the easement again, please, Will? Because we're looking at the landscaping plan now, and that green area on the landscaping plan kind of makes you think that the easement is that whole piece. It's not. The easement is that aqua colored trapezoid to the right of the drawing.
Oh,
That
so
is now a parallelogram because it goes from 50 feet right. It goes,
All
Kept it
along.
It's 50 feet.
along.
Uh-huh.
yes,
Doesn't have
yes.
to be any longer.
Yeah.
And we are also looking, once we've now understood that the clear restriction was not applied to this lot, we would like to continue to, as you suggested,
Uh-huh.
to plant the perimeter of the lot to give it even more privacy. Not only the historic street, but even from Shipyard.
Right. Yeah. My main concern was on Harbor because I felt like that the view of those neighbors to a built environment rather than a,
And we would like to continue planting out the entire harbor. So, and
right. Okay. Well, let's just talk about, we need to talk about the easement
View from
first,
the-
if you
from the-
don't mind. Just like I don't want to mix the apples and oranges, but thank you for that illustration. It's helpful. So I just need the board to comment on the proposed easement and then we can kind of close that discussion and move on to the rest of this. Does anybody have any thoughts they'd like to share about the easement?
I'm fine with the easement.
Me too. I'm agreeable.
Me too.
All right. Well, gee, if only everything was so simple. That's great. So David, do we vote on this or what's our next? I've never done this before.
We
What
make
is-
recommendation, I guess you vote to recommend to the town board to
Okay.
accept.
All right.
that
So I'd
easement.
like to make a motion to vote that we recommend to the town board to accept the easement as proposed by the applicant along Old Stone Highway. May I have a second, please?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, good to go. All right, so now we're we're meant to be dealing with the structure as proposed. I would like to, maybe we can put that landscaping plan up again because now we're going to be actually be talking about that a little bit. I'm not sure that the landscaping that you propose along Shipyard, because you'll be closing that all in, and I think that Shipyard would be what's on the left of the screen that you see here on the bottom half of the. Yes, thank you, Will. I had been proposing just something not massive, something some kind of a low growth profile along Harbor, just to soften the view from the neighbors. There are quite a few people that live on that street, that they're small lots. And that's where I was suggesting to put some plantings. But I'd be open to any other suggestions the board had. I don't happen to mind this, but I don't think it's in keeping with the historic district guidelines, which is to keep an open vista, to have it much more like meadowland than forest.
Woodland, yeah.
Yeah.
Mhm.
I will just say that for the non-historic structure that's being built in the historic district,
Uh-huh.
the code does suggest that it be screened with the deciduous.
All right. All right. Then if that
With
fulfills,
deciduous trees.
Yes,
Right.
as long as the proposed landscaping isn't going to obscure the existing house that your client also owns, like that's the facade of a historic house is the important part of it. But for a non-historic house, I think as long as it's set back from the road and screened, that's kind of what the guidance is.
okay. All right. Well, then I would say that although this proposal doesn't have anything along Harbor that I can see, am I wrong in reading this? I see it
Yeah, the initial was not, but. we
on
did take that,
Shipyard,
and
but
that's
not
what,
on Harbor.
Andrew had just mentioned was that
Got it.
No.
Yep. They'd like to do that.
they would like to.
Okay,
yeah,
well, then
but
I
it
think-
wasn't part of the
yes.
application, so.
Right. No, I hear you. Yeah, it's part of the evolution, as we like to say. Okay. Well, does anybody have any comments on this?
It's fine.
Oh, I think it's
Okay.
fine.
I think if you were to come back with a landscaping proposal for Long Harbor, as you're suggesting you'd like to, and the kinds of plants you'd be using, deciduous trees seems to be the guidance the code gives us for some of those. So, it wouldn't be my choice, but that's what we're,
Could we ask for a vote today with that submission being done post? Because.
yeah, I think we can do that. Well, I don't know. How can we improve a plan that we can't approve the landscaping, or we could probably,
Are we,
I don't
are
know.
we looking at the house?
You could poll the board.
You could, I think that
we're
you could,
looking at the whole proposal right now.
you could
Okay.
approve
Just wasn't sure.
the
I'm
structure.
sorry,
to-
David.
You could approve the structure. You could come back to submit a landscaping
Okay.
plan.
Right,
Okay.
if we could do the board, yeah, just
Yep,
because there's a
okay.
hole in the ground and materials
Yeah,
sitting there,
I
that
understand. I understand. I get it.
precipice. for-
Okay. If that's a a protocol that's not going to snarl things up down the pike, then I would like to propose that we approve this building as proposed.
I have one question.
Yes,
Just
please.
about the chimney, looking at the elevations.
I wanted to kind of look.
Okay.
So is it 3 feet above the roof? I just want to make sure that you know you're not going to have to come back here for some approval if
It's-
Like the
it's
chimney
less
is-
than 3 feet. It's just a metal asbestos that comes through. and
Okay.
At top.
okay, that's the spec. Okay, then I think I'm fine with it.
Okay.
Okay.
Could you just go back to that elevation, please, Will? Thank you.
It's on the right.
See that little,
Element?
yeah.
Keep it the minimum it can be.
Okay,
It's
For
not a-
fire code, yeah.
Yeah.
okay. You comfortable with that?
Yeah, I mean, you know, this is not ideal in 100 ways, but I think this is acceptable. So, did anybody have any other questions before I ask for a second?
No.
Okay, may I have a second, please?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right. Go in peace and happy holidays. And thanks for your patience and thank your client for the easement. Now that goes off to the town board and we have nothing.
I'll be in touch with council
Got it.
to take the steps necessary.
Perfect.
And
Perfect.
I've had John involved as well, but so.
Good. Yes, good man
He's a-
himself.
He's a busy
Okay.
man.
Yes, he is.
And we'll present the new landscape. plan.
Yes, if
Yes.
you would, just so we know what's going to go along Harbor, because what we have voted on has no landscaping on Harbor, which is one of the things we were hoping for.
And we will have. it.
Okay,
Okay.
We'll
I trust
submit.
you. Okay.
Thank you.
thank you.
Okay.
All right. Next up, historic landmark, Corinne Herndon. Suffolk County Tax Map number 300-77-4-2.1 is this Britain. I saw Britain. Hi, Britain. Okay, Chip, this is yours.
So this is an application to renovate what appears to be an 18th century cottage in the Springs Historic District. The district includes the buildings in the commercial center of the hamlet, as well as 10 vernacular farmhouses and barns on adjoining roads. This property is in a highly dilapidated state, including the house and the small outbuildings. Will, could you pull up some of the pictures? That's a vegetable stand. That's one of the outbuildings. Next. That's a small garden shed. That's an abandoned swimming pool. And that is the house itself.
Oh, my goodness.
Applicant seeks to renovate or restore the house as well as build a new pool house, a screened-in porch, and a shed. The scale of all the proposed structures will match the existing structures, i.e. they're very modest. This property is well-known and very visible on a curve on 3 Mile Harbor Road, just before the old East Hampton Point, and this is on the inland side. In recent years, the first building we looked at, the small structure close to the road, was a very charming vegetable stand. It's a 2.25 acre property, recently descended in the Gardner family, specifically Fanny Gardner Collins and her daughter, Mary Collins. Fanny was something of a local celebrity, the daughter of Winthrop Gardner Sr. and the brother of the glamorous playboy Winthrop Gardner Jr. Both grew up in their family's in-town estate, which is now the LVIS building. This renovation restoration will use red cedar shingles on the sides and the roof of the house with natural weathered finish. New windows and doors will match existing. Trim will be natural cedar. Windows and doors to be painted red on the south and west side elevations and black on the eastern elevation. The barn and the shed and the pool house will all be treated in a similar fashion, but have metal standing seam black roofs. This is a commendable undertaking and embodies why we have historic districts. Britton, would you like to fill us in on anything I missed?
I just want to point out, this actually isn't the historic district. It's a historic landmark.
It's a special
Yeah.
historic landmark.
Right, but it's not part of the Springs Historic District. It's
No,
part- it's-
we know
Right. It's,
Right, that was in the beginning.
it's a special historic
Landmark.
landmark.
And so
Yeah.
I submitted the entire package, but the outbuildings actually by that historic district are actually exempt from review. I think this is a pretty commendable application. We're not adding a single square foot to anything and just really restoring. And I'm sure we've all driven by this. It's kind of an iconic location as you come up the hill, and it's just year after year, it's been dilapidated and falling into further and further disrepair. And I remember that being a pretty active farm stand and a beautiful sort of meadow of a field. And as you can see, the pool is dilapidated, and this, my client bought this with the only intent of sort of restoring it. And I think she's done a pretty good job of moving everything to the back, keeping the relationship between the two buildings on the street. And she just wanted to have that one eastern elevation, which wouldn't be visible to anybody unless you were actually the inhabitant or a guest of the inhabitant, which is on the rear side of the main structure, have a different color in the handful of windows that are there. But otherwise, I think I actually learned something in your presentation. I didn't know about I knew about the Gardner family, but I didn't know some of those details. But otherwise, I'd be happy to answer any questions the board has.
Okay. Well, I think we have been learning more about historic buildings and preservation and rehabilitation and all these words that are used with historic buildings. And this is a special historic landmark. I guess my question, could we just go through are there elevations is it just they're not, obviously the footprint of the house is staying the same, but it's just windows and doors that they're proposing to replace
And the siding.
and the siding.
It is all
Yeah,
so,
the house is not weather tight currently.
yeah, no, it's so dilapidated. Anyone else would have torn this building down.
Right, except that I think they're prohibited from demolishing it as
Right.
part of the special historic district landmark, yes, as a practical matter.
But there's parts of it that are about to fall down.
Right, I understand, but the distinct difference for these special historic landmarks is that they cannot be demolished. They have to be restored somehow.
Right, which is why they get the density bonus. They're allowed to build another house.
Exactly. It's a, and I mean, I'm very grateful to any of the people who own these homes who have been having to do it. It's a little, there can be some incongruity. I've seen some other of these special historic landmarks that are, have kind of wacky stuff on them. But anyway, this, what I'm trying to make sure is whether we're following the code requirements for, are we permitted to approve brand new windows, or does it have to be does it have to be wood because that's a historic,
They are wood.
Well, can we make the recommendation rather that the sort of the standards are followed? And so if this is a rehabilitation, which it seems to be in that direction, then ideally the windows and doors would be restored, like preserved and not replaced.
Right, these unfortunately that opportunity is long since sailed.
Well, I think that's
Are the
a
windows
question for
gone?
us. That's a question for me. I mean, who has actually evaluated that?
Did you visit the site?
A contractor? I mean, no,
let me
I'm
ask-
I'm just
I'm
wondering
not
if
a
you went there,
preservation
'cause if you-
professional, but I think preservation professionals would know the best
Oh.
about this.
yeah, I think that what's happening here is there's a different level of scrutiny applied to this than there would be for another building that has old windows in it that are no longer watertight or otherwise need to be, replaced in the normal sense of the term. Because this is an historic landmark, there's a different treatment for that. So I just, and I'm trying to learn myself what that is so that we are doing this correctly. We've never done one of these before. So this is going to be set a certain precedent for us in terms of how we review.
The board has reviewed historic landmarks before. So the board has reviewed historic landmarks before.
Yes.
Are all the buildings
special
going to
historic
remain,
landmarks?
Britain,
That's different.
even the farm stand? And that will be what?
Just restored as well in the same location.
So
It's not historic.
Yeah, it's not, right? It's only the house that
Called the
does not
pig
have.
pen?
Yes.
Yes.
And produce. the
Yes.
food truck.
the goal of the board in this situation is to preserve the historic features of the structure, right? So that's typically the front facade that faces the street. In the 1983 survey of the Springs historic property that Bob Hefner did, talks about the Zadok Bennett house, and it says, the house stands close to the road on a long lot of 10.5 acres of pasture land and wood. This 1.5 story shingle house faces south, not towards the road. Both the entrance and chimney are at the east end of the front facade. The west facade facing the road has a kitchen door. A small one-story addition projects from the north half of the east end gable. Significance, date of initial construction, mid-18th century. Zadok Bennett is listed as the owner of this house on the 1873 Beers Atlas. The house was probably built by one of his ancestors. Zadok's grandfather, Edward Bennett, lived at the 3 Mile Harbor, may have built this house. It says that the 1838 Coast Survey shows 3 fields around the house and a small orchard. It also shows marshlands around Black Marsh opposite the house. Black Marsh is now Shagwan Marina. And that's really it. And on the form for notable features, it doesn't really, it says description, shingles, wood frame, interlocking joints for structural system. Condition was good, and it was the original location of it. So
Okay.
in that situation, I think that the windows are not necessarily the what make it historically significant. Or as long as you maintain the 3/3 or whatever the original
Okay.
appearance is,
Uh-huh.
if they're that dilapidated,
And these ones are actually aluminum. Those are,
That's what I was wondering.
Oh,
Are
okay.
those being, that's what I wanted to know is
all the
there,
windows are being replaced
Wooden windows. yeah.
with wood windows.
Well, that's nice.
so are there any windows in this that are original? At all,
I don't believe
or
so.
at least
Okay.
over 100 years old?
I don't believe there's a window in this building that's over 100 years
Okay.
old.
Okay. I mean, that's fair enough.
Is there any documentation of what like this originally looked like? Is like best guess? There's a description.
that's
here.
what
Only
David
from
was reading.
1983.
Yeah, we don't have, I mean, this
We
is,
don't.
it's a little fuzzy.
Okay.
That, which is why I'm trying to like work through some sort of process here that will serve us going
Right. So we
forward.
don't know what the original.
No.
And this is
And
the
if
front
it-
facade that we're
Sure.
looking, I mean, front by front, I mean, the one that they has the front door because it's not facing the road.
Right, the left-hand side faces, the left side of the house faces.
Faces the
right.
road.
Right. So,
Right.
but my point being that this facade is actually vital and not the the street facing facade also, but this one is also vital.
Right, you see both of them. It sits on an angle to the
Right.
road, yes.
Right. Well, so if it has aluminum windows presently, then it seems to me that as long as those windows are replaced with the same, 3/3 or 4/4, whatever the configuration was,
I
that
think they're
was
6/6.
6/6, whatever, that would be acceptable. And it's nice that they're reverting to wood instead of using aluminum.
Many
It's a
other,
nicer, it's much nice. It's much truer
More
to
in
the
keeping with the
construction. Yeah. And to the character of that historic area. So does anybody else have anything? they'd
Well,
like to
just
add?
pointing out, so one window, if we can go to the elevations, page S-101, just pointing out to the board. So the second floor west window would be replaced as like currently an aluminum double hung, looks to be replaced with a 6/6 to match the 2 windows below. So that's a change.
Right.
The rear elevation, there is more change going on. Let's go to the next page. So on the top left is the existing, on the right is the proposed.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
This is the siding that doesn't face the road.
Correct.
And this is where they want to use the black trim on the windows versus the red historical trim.
Yeah, well, I'm just first pointing out the change in the
Right.
fenestration. So,
And the intent of that, just to clarify, is because the windows are, have little panes and it doesn't let in a lot of light. And they wanted to keep those 3 facades. And the idea is to get some light into this.
You're also changing the placement of the door.
right.
Yeah, the door is being moved.
Placement of the door, the arrangement of the door.
An addition.
The windows are much larger. The windows don't have the same mullion grid proposed on this elevation. They're just
2/2.
2/2, or they maybe even be fixed. It's hard to tell. My initial reaction is the top window. I understand the desire to get light in, but it seems quite large proportionately,
Yeah.
relative to the other fenestration on the house. Doesn't seem to match. The rear fenestration doesn't seem to match the other windows in the house. And I'm not saying that they should match exactly, but
No, I think it's a street facade.
in terms of the mullion pattern, the size is much larger. So,
From a color as well.
Well, the windows in this house are so small that I don't think you could actually live in it and get any kind of light in the house. So I don't have a problem with the bigger windows on the side you're not going to see. Maybe they should be 6/6 instead of 2/2.
and
And just to note that that door on this rear elevation is definitely not historic. Whether it's in the historic position, we don't have any information on that.
Right.
But the idea was to center it.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I'm just having. I think Frank has made some interesting comments on that one elevation. I'm just trying to review these guidelines for the special historic landmarks. I take Frank's point about the windows, and it is sort of reorganizing that facade pretty. I mean, I think it looks fine. The recommended changes are not difficult, although I agree with Frank about the size of that window up near the peak of the roof. I think that's too big. And I also would like to see the panes consistent to whatever was, on the other side, that the 4/4,
6/6.
6/6, excuse me.
Just want to point out this, and I'm not sure if this was clear in the presentation, that this rear elevation, that was an addition that was put onto the house. It was put on in the 90s, so that was never historic. And that's why it was, we might be trying to restore something that didn't exist. There was a building permit in 1996 for 105 square foot, 1-story addition on the rear.
Right.
So that's that's the area.
Yeah, I understand. I just, we have special guidelines for reviewing these particular applications. I'm just trying to make sure, that windows intend to retain windows that contribute to the historic character of a building, especially on the front facade. Many buildings retain significant windows and sashes that contribute to their authentic historic character. Windows in their trim that contribute to the historic character of the building should be retained. For any request to replace window components, the board will consider their condition and the contribution the existing windows make to the historic character of the house. Replacement of deteriorated components for important windows, especially those on the front facade, should match the material, configuration, and dimensions of the historic windows. Work to windows on a rear wall and existing and new storm windows, window screens, and window shutters are exempt from review. All right, what's that? Is this a rear wall? This is the left side. I can't.
Side with the big windows faces the back of the property.
Okay, so that would be
Not
a rear
visible
wall.
from the-
Okay,
It basically faces the swimming pool.
okay, all right. So then I think we're. I would ask you to make them consistent with the front and to make that smaller, that window above the peak smaller. But it says here, work to windows on a rear wall and existing and new storm windows, window screens, and window shutters are exempt from review. So maybe we can't review this. David, do you see where I'm reading from?
And also if it's not part of the historic.
Yeah, well, that's what Britain is saying.
Also,
It's not,
the addition is not historic, but
Yeah.
the upper window is.
yeah.
Yeah, this is where I'm unclear. So only the lower portion is the addition. So what that little section that juts out on the bottom, is that what we're talking about? That's an
100
addition?
square feet is not much.
Right, that would seem to me to be the part that was pushed out a little bit.
That little part on the
Yeah,
bottom?
yeah.
Okay. All right. So the upper window is
The
the
upper
one
window is the
that
more-
was original.
Okay,
Well, yeah, I don't,
original to the extent
I
that we
think that
can.
the idea for, in my opinion, for this is that it retain as much of the original elements, to retain as much integrity as possible to the original.
Right, okay, well, I
And
think
I
they're,
think the significant part of it is the part facing away from the street. That's what's noted in the Hefner survey.
It's the facade, the south facing facade. Yeah, because that's how it was built. A lot of the houses were built facing south that way.
okay, well, so where are we on this?
I think it's fine.
Do we need to,
Well, do you want,
Chip?
we want to leave those 2/2 windows or ask them to become 6/6?
I think 6/6 is more cohesive. Don't you?
I do, Frank.
Yeah, I guess my question is that bump out part of our review? Is that within our jurisdiction? It seems to me that
But so
that, I don't know, is that a historic?
So
Built in the 90s. it
Well,
was-
that little, yeah, can you show them, Britton?
that We don't have review over
The
that.
right elevation where the roof line has an angle and then it goes flat, that's
That comes
the
out a
one
smidge.
story addition.
That was the
put up-
addition.
Right. So do we have jurisdiction over what happens there?
If that's the rear, and I mean, if we can.
And the reason that the window got larger in the gable was because I need to meet egress building code. There's a bedroom up there. So I don't believe that window that you see on the existing elevation meets code. I need 5.7 square feet.
I think of course we would have
Oh,
jurisdiction
well,
over it because it's.
Sorry?
The question was if we have jurisdiction over yes, it's the same structure.
Okay. All
And
right.
so we have to make sure that any new changes to that preserve the
Okay.
historic character.
Right.
Okay.
And
So-
what,
Except for the section on windows, it says the rear elevation is exempt from review.
But in this case, it says that the historically significant part of it is the rear, right? So that is the
No,
south facing facade in the Hefner survey,
I
right?
think that's what was,
this is not the south facing
this is not
facade.
south
Okay,
facing.
I apologize. then.
South is
yeah, this,
when I'm coming up
this-
Fremont Harbor Road. This is east.
right. So the west facing facade is the one that's on the road, right?
So in
So
Yes.
the
Yes.
front door is not
That's
what
where-
we would normally consider the front facade is not on the
not
road side.
facing
It's
the
not what we would normally determine as the facade.
It faces south and the other side faces west.
Right.
That's where the sun
Yeah.
sets.
Well, I think if we
So if you
can,
look at E2DC, work to windows on a rear and existing and new storm windows, window screens and window shutters are exempt from ARB review.
oh, you're looking at, so that's what I just read.
Yep, just
Um,
rewording it.
Okay, well, I mean, I would prefer to see the windows consistent. Is the top window, can is that at the minimum that it has to be for egress? Britton?
I
Or
don't
can
know
that
that off
be
the top
made
of
a
my
little
head.
smaller? I don't know what the,
But the idea is it's the only window on the second floor that, there's no dormers on either side. So you're only getting light on one side of this bedroom.
I think the more important thing is the egress, no?
right, isn't it for
But you
fire?
can make a casement window much smaller that would meet code if it's an egress concern. And you
But
put
is that
mullions in.
historic? Is it more historic to have a casement than a double hung? I mean, the idea was the double hung is more historic. We didn't have casements in the,
Yeah, no,
It's all
I,
relative, but I'm saying if we're trying to make it historic, the size of that window relative to everything else, and particularly given what it is currently and proportional to all the other windows, it's not, as Kathy said, it's not consistent.
and it looks bigger than the
Dave, can you
door
weigh in on whether
almost.
this is exempt from review?
It's quite a big window.
It is.
It'd be like 5 by 3 feet.
Yeah, can you
It looks out of
maybe,
proportion a bit.
yeah, I think so too. Can you maybe, come back with a different, plan for that second story window there? And then, and with the,
I'd rather say that if we could go with a 6/6 divided light, if that makes the board to the minimum size, that's 5.7 square feet. And if you'd like to choose whether it's a casement or a double hung, I'd be willing to do that. I don't want to waste the time for one window. I think we could settle with
I think
that.
that's fair. I think that's very
Yeah,
fair.
I think it's fair.
Well, there's no information given here. Sorry, that I don't like saying it's on us because we don't have the information of how big that window is. It's not dimensional.
No, I have the plans. I have the plans.
well,
I feel like it's the onus is being put on us when it shouldn't be.
okay, well, I take Frank's point.
I believe this elevation is exempt from your review
I mean,
altogether.
that's, I mean, I do want to ask, are
David,
we
is it
talking
exempt
about
from
something
review?
that we don't have jurisdiction over?
Yeah, well, that would make a difference. If it's exempt from review, then, we could just say, please make it smaller so it's
Right.
more compatible, but we can't turn it away because it's not.
You won't be winning any awards for
Right.
preservation either.
Right. Well, you know,
In that,
You know the material of the original windows too?
They're not, they were wood. I mean, just from the era that they were built, they were wood. There was no other materials at that time.
This is what it looked like in 1983.
I mean, it seems obvious that
Yeah.
when this was built, they were wood windows.
Yeah.
yeah, Mooney has a printout of it.
it's facing south. Yeah. So, I'm sorry, wait a minute.
So
This
do-
facade that we're dealing with right now is the west facade?
You can see it.
No.
No, it's the
East,
east,
east.
east
Okay.
facade. The
No,
west
so-
facade is along the street and that,
And if you look at the window and door schedule in the submittal S300, it says it's the minimum for egress. The window on the first floor being 5 square feet and the second floor being 5.7. So that's what
So
set the size.
what, okay. And this one is how much? The renovation wouldn't be part of that picture because that was taken in 83 and the renovation was done in 91.
No, it's not on
No, it's
there.
not even on here.
It's
It
the
would be
bump
the
out
back.
that's
Yeah, that's what I
Yeah.
mean. Yeah.
No, I
Oh, it's, yeah, okay.
I just was
mentioning it.
looking
Yeah,
at this
yeah, yeah.
is kind of weird.
Okay, well, I think we just need some guidance on whether we can review this window or not. I would still urge you to make it smaller, even if we can't. But, which you might could do, and still, meet your egress issues.
Do we have jurisdiction over this elevation? Do we?
David, are
I
you,
have to look into it and get
he's
back
got
to
to
you.
look into it.
Okay, so let's table this.
I'm not prepared to say
We haven't
definitively
even
we
looked at the
don't,
rest
and
of
then
it, no? The pool. Oh.
Yeah, we've got more to look at. We could look at the pool house and so forth. Maybe he'll come up with something.
Those
while we're
are
doing
also
that.
in the code as being exempt from review, all accessory structures. And the only jurisdiction that you have is if we're proposing to build a second residence.
Right.
As the accessory structures relate to that, we're not proposing to do that at
I
this time.
think,
Okay,
yes,
then
I
why
think
was it on
that's
the
true.
application?
Well, just for full disclosure would be my guess.
Hmm.
Yeah, it's
accessory
a little
structures are
bit of
not
a
part of this review.
mishmash here for sure. Okay.
Those would be.
Table it.
So what do you want to do?
Would we benefit from any further guidance?
I don't know at this point. I think we've kind of answered our own questions. I mean, initially when I first saw this, I thought, well, you should hire an historic consultant because it's such an old building. But if the windows have already been replaced with vinyl ones, it seems to me like this is an historic upgrade if they're wood.
Yeah.
And they're the multiple, the panes are more cohesive with the character of that community. And if we don't have jurisdiction over that one elevation, then I don't know what more we're banging our heads against the wall, even if we prefer it to be different. So, and if we don't have jurisdiction over the outbuildings, then it just comes down to this, it seems. So,
I really think this is a gift. I mean, this building would fall down in another couple of years, and this lady is willing to restore it to make it look substantially what it originally looked like. I think we ought to be a little bit in her favor here.
well, I understand that point, and I feel a sense of generosity to anyone who has bought these homes, but it's got to be clear that that was the deal. They get a second home on that
Should they
they
want
get a
it.
second residence on the property if they choose to, by keeping the historic
Sure,
house
sure.
and maintaining the historic house. So as much as it is a contribution to the community, they're getting a big, there's a lot of discretion that's being directed toward them for that. So I think we need to, I think it's fair for us to give Britton an answer. Maybe, David, do you recommend we table this till you have a chance to determine whether we have the jurisdiction over that?
Could I propose that we do the following for the benefit of the applicant, that if it is ruled that we do not have jurisdiction over the.
yeah, if it
the
turns out that we
rear
don't have jurisdiction, it's invalid anyway. So,
Okay, all right, so fair enough. Okay. So it'll just be once, if David, yeah, that's a good idea.
What he's going to
I
say,
can't hear what it says.
Well, he said if it turns out we don't have jurisdiction over it anyway, and we would just be approving it in error, so we would have to rescind that approval, and he'll
Right.
discover that. But in the meantime, we can probably move on this. with
Right.
That condition.
Right.
I think Frank was proposing a conditioned approval.
Correct.
Okay.
It's the rear.
Okay.
I'm assuming the code means rear is the rear yard. That's where it's
Not
been.
visible.
This is,
So what are we doing now?
Okay.
What
So,
are the,
we're-
what are the
we're-
doors
I-
that? Oh,
I think what we are doing is this, reviewing this with the assumption that we don't have jurisdiction over that proposed rear elevation.
Yes.
So that's our review today.
Yes. So in that circumstance, does anybody have any other questions for the applicant?
yes, I'd like to know what the doors that are replacing what's existing are going to be.
Wooden Marvin doors,
they match the same species of the windows. They're actually Simpson
Simpson doors.
Marvin.
Do we have pictures?
Yes.
Yep. And we have,
We could
you have a
all
spec
look at
sheet
them.
in your
Can we-
package.
Is that something you can show us, Will?
I have it right here.
The doors that are proposed?
And the doors that are existing are not original?
The one on the rear is from 1996 from that
Well,
edition.
the addition, I know.
So there's only
I'm
two
talking
doors.
about the south facade in particular.
I don't believe that they're,
So I don't believe is not enough for me. I'm
Yeah,
sorry.
no, we
What-
need.
I'm an
I need
an
confirmation.
evidentiary person who I don't have any evidence. There's no building permits. There's no
Right.
cataloging of this
I
building.
understand.
So I
my-
wouldn't want
my-
to say, yes, it's not historic, but I'm not going to lie to you. I don't know. And I don't think there's any ability to have that information.
Well, this is why I'm asking is, could we benefit from knowing from Bob Hefner what the circumstances of those doors actually are? I mean, I don't know if they're not mentioned in here. Maybe they're not significant, but maybe they are. I don't know.
They're not mentioned in his review. I can say that.
Right.
But I just said that. So, but I'm just wondering, I can't just go by, I believe they are, or I'm not sure, I just to
Right.
replace a door for me to vote on that right now. I'm not confident.
Right.
but if they're not mentioned by Bob Hefner, they must not be significant.
That's not necessarily the case. I
Right,
don't know.
but-
These surveys are really intensive
but-
and sometimes.
But I don't know. Yeah, I take your point, but I don't know where we can find that out. If Bob Hefner doesn't know, I don't know who does.
Well, have we asked him? I mean, the survey is from 1983.
Uh-huh.
Just
No,
ask
So
we
the
haven't.
code does
If we
say too
could-
that the board realizes greater flexibility is required in reviewing additions or alterations to rear walls of houses where installation of doors, windows, and additions with more glazing than found in historic houses can be expected.
In additions.
I mean,
It means less.
Are you reading E2
Yeah, I
section?
just said the rear is really not.
Oh, we're still on the rear. Okay. It wasn't on the rear.
Right, you move to the doors.
David,
Hold
you-
the board, Kathy.
E2,
I
D,
just want to make sure that
Additions and
if there's a,
alterations.
I mean, these are the
No, I was looking
materials,
at-
but it doesn't show the door, the design of the door.
guidelines
Have
for
them
the
in
historic
blueprints, but
residence.
The blueprints are so huge. It would take
Okay,
up
well,
this-
maybe he,
Is
maybe
there
Will can.
digital?
This is.
I don't have the digital.
You don't
E2
have it.
itself.
Okay.
I have the blueprints. Do you want to see them?
I think Esperanza would like to, and I would like to know that we have at least looked at the, excuse me? Table. No, it's okay.
what's this?
He can show us the door, the elevation of the door. He's trying to see what the door is gonna look like, and we don't have that.
Here's
Oh.
one door. It's a board and batten door, solid. Here's the other door. It's a 6-panel door.
There must be a spec sheet. That's what I'm
Yeah,
thinking.
there
is
doesn't seem to
more
be.
appropriate. So it's not like we can.
There is.
Well,
no
I'm
light.
guessing it's a custom door, custom wood door.
Are we speaking of the front door?
Yeah, it's a
It's a
strip.
custom Simpson board and batten door.
So there wouldn't be any specs. It'd just be solid core
No, I get it.
wood door.
So where is the sconce?
for
supposed to be?
elevations.
I'm sorry.
There's a sconce, a proposed sconce. Is that,
Oh, wait.
So the only sconce I see is on the rear elevation, which we don't have
okay,
jurisdiction
so we don't
on.
have jurisdiction. over
So
here.
out of curiosity, is there gonna be anything to light the front steps?
I believe, again, I believe lighting is also exempt on these properties from
Okay.
ARB review.
Really? That's unusual because we have to approve lighting on every other property.
Well, there's no proposed on the 3 elevations we have jurisdiction over. There's no
Right.
proposed lighting. So, if they want to come back for us for approval
Yeah,
for lighting,
okay.
fine, but
The building department will pick it up if there has to be
Yeah.
lighting.
we can't deny for
No, that's right.
something that's not there.
Over what? The lighting? I don't think that's the case.
E4D
You know,
exterior lighting is exempt from review on these properties.
wow.
So you could put like
Well, what are we?
some wild
this is
fixture and it would
crazy.
be in keeping with the historic character.
Yeah,
That
I don't
sounds
know. I mean, look,
incredible.
No, I don't-
these
some of these-
guidelines are flawed. There's clearly, but if that's what it says, then we're bound by them. It's not always, consistent in what we think to be historically appropriate. But if we're not able to review it, we're not able to review it.
But if the applicant is going as so far as to replacing all the windows with wood and preserving the house, don't you think they're going to make an appropriate door as appropriate as possible? I think we're nitpicking.
I think, Sarah, let's poll the board and see where we are.
I'm not nitpicking.
Yeah, I mean, I understand the concept that we might be nitpicking, but I have not reviewed a special historic landmark with this. There are very limited numbers of them. There are like 35 of them throughout the town. And I'm trying to learn this process and trying to apply the process appropriately. So if we don't have jurisdiction over where the facades that the doors are on, then I guess it doesn't matter what kind of door goes in. But these seem like inconsistent values to our charge to be preserving historic character in historic landmark areas. So I'm exhausted by this too. I need to get out of here early. I'm not loving this discussion, but I don't know how else to conduct it in good faith. So David, do you have any advice for us?
So I think that, it does say work to a doorway on the side or rear walls is exempt from review. But does the work that's being done alter the architectural significance of the house? Like how are you defining work? Like, is it just a repair of the existing door or the installation of something new? Because I think,
well, it's clearly the installation of something new on this one, excuse me, elevation that
I
it
would
seems
say that
we have
that's
no jurisdiction
replacement.
over.
almost not, that's
This is the only door that's being replaced.
No, there are two doors,
Two
but
doors.
I'm,
One's a 6-panel door on the other side.
Which other side?
I guess.
So on
opposite
the
side of the house.
on the S101
What we
on
would
the
consider the front door.
south elevation, there is a door that seems to be, the whole elevation is being replaced in kind. There's no change to it,
In kind.
So here's
meaning that there's no change in the design.
There's no just change in the design. Right. Okay.
Materials.
Right.
Right. I mean, to me,
Well,
the issue I'm grappling with is that there seems to be, I have not seen any historical documentation of what the house is. So,
Right. What standard are we holding? it to?
what standard are we holding to if we have no documentation of what this historically
understand.
was?
Yes. I understand. Okay.
Which is why I suggested.
So here is the existing door and the new door matches it on the architectural plan.
We shouldn't be doing this in the public, man. We have to, people,
There's a question of what the door looks like.
My question
Okay.
is the door original?
do you have the door photo? Will, can you
Well,
get,
let's look at the door. The whole bottom of it is
I-
rotten off.
I think that,
I think it's lost to history what the original door is.
yeah.
I don't think we'll ever know.
Just wondering. We're not experts.
Can you, enlarge that for us, please? Okay. Yeah, this door is, and well, it looks like they're replacing it in kind almost. It is a
Yes.
batten.
That's the intent.
Yeah, it does look like the original door. Okay, I don't know that we can, I mean, there's a part of me that thought, well, maybe we should hire an historic consultant, but it doesn't seem like we're going to get anywhere with that because there's nothing on the record for what this was. And if this was the existing door, I think that's as close as we're going to be able to come. So, I'm inclined to, go forward with this, although I don't love the that big window. Any chance you could make that window smaller?
If the building code permits it to be smaller than it's shown, I would be happy to do so.
Great.
But I believe the documents that you have show that it's the minimum size.
It is the minimum size. Okay, I wasn't clear on that. All right.
For a double hung,
Yeah. Okay.
but. beyond
And
our
if you could,
jurisdiction.
make the panes consistent with the ones in the front, I think that would be an improvement. But does anybody else have any other questions? Okay.
So do we have all the information, the colors that we need and, okay.
Yep. Okay.
And out of curiosity, isn't the house kind of like way out of plumb? Is that going to become less the leaning tower of Springs?
I hope it's still there when I leave this room.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
It
All
needs
right.
to, it needs to go under work
Yeah.
soon.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, you can see that's how the critters get in.
Pestilence. Okay. It's the word of the day. All right. So do you want to make a motion, Chip?
So I make a motion to approve this project as submitted with the understanding that the east-facing windows on the, we're not going to do that. Oh, no, I just
No,
make a
the
motion to
east-
approve this project as submitted
Well, with the recommendation that the windows are consistent.
with the recommendation that the windows be consistent, particularly on the east-facing facade. That would be paned windows, probably 6/6.
Right. May I have a second, please?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
I'm opposed.
Okay. All right. Happy holidays, Britton. Thank you. Okay. What?
Esperanza.
Oceanside owners, Suffolk County Tax Act number 300-47-2-10.1. This is mine. Will, could you please bring up the pictures? Okay, this is for a second-story deck on the Smiley Face Hotel, which most of us know it as, right on the David, are we officially adjourned?
Oh, it's on.
Oh, God, that would be so.
What in
I think there's
holy
still
hell?
cameras that are recording here too.
Yes.
As backup.
I think-
So.
So we can continue.
I think we might be back.
All right, we're back up, but without the photographs, it's hard for me to put this.
Let's see if it works now, honey.
Kathy,
There we go.
Can I make a quick suggestion?
Yes.
Do you want to do the ag overlays?
Yeah, okay, that's a good idea. I'll just do this one and then we'll. Yep, we'll do that. Yes, thank you. That's a good suggestion. Okay. So anyway, Eureka. This is the hotel. It has that really fabulous flying gable thing going on. Could you get to the first story building photo, please? I went out there on Tuesday. It was a spectacular day. Is there a better one that shows it in relationship to the neighboring building there? Okay. So the building on the right, that one story, is proposed to have a 515 square foot deck put on the southern half of that building with a stairwell that goes down to the ground out in front of it. I took some of these pictures because there were a couple of gates and fences, and I just wasn't sure whether that was there were approvals for that, but we can look at that at a different time. That's not before us at this moment.
Enlarging an existing deck?
Say again?
They're enlarging the existing deck?
No, they're creating a deck. They're going to flatten some
It's like a
portion of the
roof deck.
roof. It's a
Oh,
roof,
it's a second
making a
floor
roof
roof
deck,
deck.
the second story roof deck on the There was a deer there. I don't know if you can see it over
Literally
there on the
on
right.
One story.
Yeah, so
Roof.
yeah, they're going to flatten the left gable, so it's going to be long and narrow. Is there who is representing this? Is the person
Says
Oh,
Britain.
Britain.
hey, I was
Brittany.
wondering where she'd gone.
So odd that I should have asked you. Hi,
I'm here and
Brittany.
Tiffany is as well. Tiffany
Sorry?
Scarlato, attorney for the applicant.
Oh, Tiffany, yes, of course. Hello, Miss Scarlato. Okay, so we looked at I was looking at this morning. And is there a proposal to connect this deck to that building, that middle building? It kind of looked like that from some of the elevations. I didn't think that was what was proposed, but
No, we're putting a deck on top of that existing roof. We're not
Right.
changing the roof line at all. It's the addition of a 515 square foot deck
right,
on building one, which is the building on the right-hand side, which is one story.
right. Okay.
And all the railings and paint colors and deck color match everything that already
Yep.
exists on the property.
Okay.
And I think there was, sorry, I was speaking in the back. Everything on this property is covered by a CO is not recently, but 3 or 4 years ago, we
Over
went through
time.
planning, we
Yeah,
went through a site
okay.
plan.
I was just curious because I saw the gates and I hadn't had a chance to check the property card. I thought I would just take a picture while I was there.
We did a pretty extensive renovation, I think prior to COVID-19, maybe.
Uh-huh.
It used to be a sort of
COVID.
weird color yellow, if anyone remembers.
Yeah,
It was
yeah,
the
I do,
bad sort of
yes.
like 70s CMU gates. And,
Yep.
they sort of whitewashed everything and kept all the structures as they were, but changed the color.
Yeah. Okay. Can you just scroll through the elevations for us, Will, please?
It should just be to the east and.
Yeah.
So that's looking at the building from the west. So this is like a trip hazard. The stairway on the right, on the far right of the slide on the top, and the deck railing that you see that sort of, it looks
Yeah. So it's taking
very
up
gray, but it's that same white slatted.
right.
I think it's because it's reduced. It's gotten dark.
Yes, there's some opacity there. So it's to match the existing railing.
Right. And then if you look at the south elevation, the railing from the building to, visually has the same height and but there's no physical connection to
Right.
building two.
Okay. I misread that, I guess.
Could you zoom in on that lower elevation, please? I can't see that.
Oh, that's good. That's much better.
Thank you so much.
Okay.
Okay. That's really weird.
Yeah, it gives the appearance as connected, but I think that's just the. What
It's
is
the
that?
roof beh-
Is
it's-
that the roof?
It's
and
the roof behind,
Okay.
from the building that?
What roof behind?
the entry porch to come into the lobby.
Right.
Oh, okay. Okay.
So that little gray line is the roof behind. What's the
I'm not certain which
cupola?
gray line you're speaking
Cupola
of.
is
That's
from-
the cupola.
yeah,
is that building?
That's the
I
roof.
see.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it might be helpful to look at the survey right now.
Yeah.
So we could we'll pull that up.
I see. I thought the cupola was on this.
Yeah.
building. I was
Yeah. No,
confused.
well, it is. Yeah. It's part of that.
Okay, zoom in on the green, because that's what we're talking about
Yep.
here. So maybe not to speak for Britain, but what you all were looking at beyond is that porch.
That little thing
the
over on
top,
the
that
right.
little
Yeah.
bump out,
Kind of a bump
that's
out.
beyond.
That's it.
So I think the survey seems to tell a pretty good story about what's happening over here with the deck, is that the deck, that we have the elevation of it, the deck is actually extending south past the front of the building. And the proposed stairs are going beyond the footprint of the deck.
Right. That's because I have a basement, 2 basement entrances actually under there. So to keep the headroom, I had to put the stair for the second floor beyond the basement entrance and the first floor deck.
Okay.
That's the logic
So-
behind the design. And then to keep it on the gable side, the west gable side was to have it sit low and in the property as opposed to on the east gable side where it would be more visible for people driving west.
Okay, so this is facing, this is facing south?
South and east.
Okay.
No? Southeast.
And this, just to give some history, this,
Building is the easternmost building and it's on the southern portion of the easternmost building. And it extends out, as Frank mentioned, over.
So you would see this as you're driving east.
I don't think you would see very much of it because
no, that was the purpose of putting it on this.
as you're heading
It's-
east.
The gable's a little bit,
The gable will obscure some of it, I think, right? The eastern gate, the gable
Correct.
on the eastern side, I think will obscure most of this deck because it's about half as wide, but,
and just for a point of history, I don't believe anybody was on the board at this time. I was in front of this board for this, addition, I believe in 2017. We used to come to the ARB preliminarily when you submitted a planning board application and they'd give comments to planning. And at that time, there was no comments from this board.
okay.
Just, I don't think anyone was here.
Yep. Okay.
Years ago.
Well, I think it's relatively straightforward. I don't have any particular problem with it. I'm willing to accept it as proposed. If anybody has any questions? And ask Ms. Visserin.
I'm not really getting a good visual of this. I'm sorry.
Okay, well, can you scroll through the elevations again? And maybe, yeah, okay, so this is the southern elevation.
So there's no rendering, right? These are just elevations.
Yeah. Can you enlarge that, please? Right. Okay.
I just made that worse.
Yeah, so you see on the right there where there's that little angled roof?
Mhm.
This is going to be to the left of it.
Yep. No, I
And
get
so
that.
the
Same height,
railing will
same
go a little
details.
bit higher than the present gable is.
What I don't understand is how this coincides with what we're looking at on the lower, in the picture below is actually the front of the building, no?
The picture below, the
So the-
stuff on the right.
On the picture below, this deck exists right where that,
Where that other deck
that
is.
soffit comes down. So the existing deck on the second floor of building 2, if you visually draw a line to your left, that's where this deck is going to
Okay.
be. Same level, same railing.
Yeah, it's not that clear. Yeah.
Well, that's a photo of
Saying that
existing.
What we're looking at in the elevation is from the south.
I'm sorry,
correct?
I was depicting the picture. What's the question?
No, so what we're looking at in the elevation is the view from the south.
Yes,
And what we're looking at in the picture is the view from the north.
yes.
That's what I'm
Yes,
confused by.
fair
I'm
enough.
not quite sure
Yes.
why we're looking at a picture.
Yeah, I think it
from
was
the
just to,
north. So what I'd like to see is the other side
right.
depicted so that, we could see. what-
Okay.
The photographs?
Since there isn't a rendering.
Go back to the photographs.
Are we talking about the west elevation? That's what you want to look at?
I think Esperanza was hoping to see a photograph
Better idea of
this.
what's happening on the south.
The
and just
south
sort of-
side. I mean, my photograph shows the south side, but
Yeah,
it's not.
so, Will, can you bring it there? you
there
go.
we go.
So that will, so the deck will extend beyond the front of,
Beyond the entryway to this building, which I wouldn't consider the front. This is the back of
Right.
the building.
Okay.
This is, and then the deck itself will be, are you saying, Britton, that it'll be the same height as the
As the deck on building 2.
decking on building 2?
Okay.
So there'll be a consistent line.
Mhm.
I mean, it's hard for me to say because I don't have a site picture.
Uh-huh.
I'm not wild about how the deck extends in front of the building because I actually think the elevation of this hotel is pretty nice.
Yeah, that's the,
So.
you mean from
but-
the street is what you're,
But it's hard to.
Does it extend in front of the
Can we
building?
go through the
Oh,
other
I don't
photographs?
think I
This is the
realized
backyard.
that. Yeah.
Can we go
I
through some
didn't-
more photos just to, in case they're,
you said you wouldn't see
Yeah.
it from the street, but I think. you would.
Right. No, you're right. Well, no, I don't know because
If you look at the
rest of the-
survey, the green area,
yeah, no, I understand what you're
Extends.
saying, but that's not even relevant. Yeah, find buildings.
you're having
It
an
is.
art exhibition.
Okay,
so.
This is the rear yard
that's the
elevation.
rear,
That's what we're
right?
talking about. It's coming off to the right. I mean, I'm not wild about it, but I'm willing to approve.
And what about the front?
But
It won't
the.
be seen from the front
I
at
don't-
all? I'm
Understand.
not
Is
really
that-
getting
But
this.
I
I'm
think the
sorry.
little, it's the reception area that has that little bump out. where that little cupola was is going to obscure that.
Do we
This
have
is-
a
What little
picture?
cupola?
Can we look at the elevations again, please? You can't really see it here. It's in between the buildings. Okay, scroll it up, please, and enlarge the southern elevation. See, there's a little bitty right in the middle there.
Mhm.
That little cupola.
So actually go down again, like up, I guess, so we could see what's above. Right there, and then zoom in on the top elevation.
So the
That's
deck
little
doesn't start
cupola.
until you're halfway down the building.
Right. But so the point I'm trying to make, and perhaps I'm not doing it correctly, is that the deck will not protrude past where the roof line is for the office there when you go in, right? Is it going to be parallel to that, or will it? Because I think the complaint here is that they don't want it to be seen from the road, from Montauk Highway. And
Right, and that was the
my-
intent of putting it on the west side of the gable.
Right,
So it's
but-
sunken below the gable.
Right, I'm trying to establish whether it will be visible from the road, or will this, the roof that's over the office area occlude that?
It's the top of the gable and the top of the rail is either coincidental or within a few inches of one another.
So when
So-
people are standing on it, you'll see their heads. So it will be visible.
But it's not, it doesn't run all the way to the Montauk Highway. So
No, I
it's
understand.
set back
This
on-
is,
into the
I'm just
building.
trying to interpret the questions the board is asking, and, and my understanding of it is I didn't think it was the structure itself, I don't think will be visible. When people are on it, they'll be visible.
Right, so
but I
that
don't think-
railing is commercial, so it's is it 2 feet?
42.
It's 42, right? 42.
It's
So
just under 4 feet,
I'd be
3.5 feet.
I'd be 13 inches above that, my head.
Okay.
So driving by Montauk Highway, you might see a head. Or a tall person, you might see some shoulders.
Well, you see, like, yeah, lots of tall people's heads. Okay. Well, I'm not, I appreciate the discussion here. I don't have any particular problem with this. It's all the same. And I think that, I'm sorry I didn't take a picture of the office, because it does sort of protrude into the parking lot. And it's more parallel to, perpendicular to the building itself. So
The main
there's,
building.
yeah, to the building that you can see it there. See the steps on the left? And there's a door and that little cupola that comes out a bit.
Yeah.
So that's what I'm saying, is that it'll, not a lot, but I think it's enough to obstruct that. Anyway. Does anybody else have any other questions or concerns regarding this?
No.
Frank, what do you think?
I'm willing to go forward with it.
Okay. So, anybody else? Esperanza or, okay, all right. I'd like to make a motion that we, accept this, proposal as submitted. May I have a second, please?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right,
Happy holidays.
thanks, Britton. Happy holidays. I'm going to skip to agricultural overlay because I think my colleagues can suffer through Pete's Garden Center and National Grid.
This is not on tonight.
Yeah, it is. We put it back. We put it on because the,
Okay, it just wasn't numbered, so I wasn't sure.
no, it was revised because the last time they were here, I didn't see the elevations in it. We probably would have approved it, but the elevations weren't part of the file, and now we found them, so we're just going to try and fast track that. So I'm going to jump to Wainscott Farm View LLC, Suffolk County Tax Note number 300-197-08-10, with apologies to people who are waiting. This is yours, Esperanza.
Yes. So who's here? Yes.
This is you.
Watching live from my car. You are very.
Timely, very timely.
Well, weren't you nice and comfy?
Ready?
Ready.
Okay. So, Wainscott Farm View at 6 Osborne Farm Lane, was last before us in October. And our letter to the applicant included the following comments. The board appreciates your efforts to date to bring the project into better compliance with the harmony of the agricultural overlay district. The second point is please reduce the mass and scale of the project overall. The third point is please reduce the mass and scale of the garage. Fourth point, please reduce the mass and scale of the rear elevation, particularly the master bedroom. And then the fifth point is actually that if you would benefit from a meeting with me and our architect, member Guittard, that we would be willing to do that. And we did do that.
Yeah, we did again.
We met again. So actually, Will, would you explain the things that you have done? Because I think you will better explain it than I will.
From the beginning or just since our
No,
last meeting?
Since the last meeting.
Okay. At our last meeting, to directly address the sort of mass and scale which has come up, we've decided to implement a joist seat, I'm calling it. It's a foundation detail where we put the floor joist system into the foundation, and we're directly shrinking the height of the house by 14 inches. So you'll see a before and after. The bottom picture was what we presented previously. You'll see there are steps up to the front door. There are raised patios around the house. In the proposed version, you'll see there is a step up to the stoop. We feel this directly changes not only the mass of the garage, but the scale of the garage. If you notice the garage, the grade doesn't change, but the floor package sort of adjusts around it. So the gable where the garage is, there's much less wall above the garage door and the window. The relationship of the garage door to the eaves is closer. So it changes the scale of the house.
Just to be clear, the upper elevation is the revised one, right?
Rise, yes. You'll notice in below the windows, there's 1 foot 2 inches, 14 inches less siding on the whole entire house. If you can zoom in at the heights, you'll see that's directly reflected. The left-hand side, there's dimensions there. So proposed 28, 9 1/4, and then 29, 11 1/4 was what it was. So 28, 9 1/4 is what it is now, or proposed. Around the house, 11.4 is proposed, sort of to the garage roof line where it was 12.6. So we've definitely taken a lot of mass out of the house by having stick out less out of the ground. If you go to this next elevation, and under the windows, you'll see the ground floor there. The floor is only about 9 or 10 inches above the grade. So we've lost some height and mass out of the building that way. Should I go on to the master as well? So in the master, which this is where we see it for the first time, again, to change the scale, we had a very clear, modern, large window facing the rear. It was about 15 feet in width. Previous applications, we reduced the height already. And to break that up and to change the scale of it, we're going to go with individual, more punched units, if you will. So the glass is 4 feet wide, 3 sections there with about an 8-inch wall in between. And on the side returns where we had a 10-foot section, there will be 8-foot units. So we've reduced about 56 square feet of additional glass out of the bedroom, and then also attempt to bring the scale down a little bit by having more wall punched windows as opposed to a 15-foot wall of glass. And then you see around the base, again, there's just less volume under the house. The house feels a little squatter, a little more grounded to the property and not as tall. Last elevation. And then I did do the massing models, which I shared when we met with two. This just shows you, again, the height of the house. The house, we took 14 inches of mass out of the house, if you will. And that directly, it changes the garage. The garage door stays, the floor comes down, and the garage, the proportion of the garage door in that gable has definitely been changed.
It looks more compact.
It hugs the ground, yeah.
Well, in this submission, the latest submission, there was no new survey, so nothing has changed on the survey since the last?
The house is in the same location, correct? Yes. Yeah, we're up against that easement and 10-foot buffer in the rear, which doesn't allow us to move the house without sacrificing the distance between the house and the pool. And we feel that we pushed it back as far as we're comfortable with.
Mhm. Yeah, could you zoom in on that, Will, as much as you can? Yes, I will.
I'm used to that now.
So I guess what I'm getting at is that you continue to be meeting the 15-foot setbacks on the sides. Just meeting them.
Correct. The house is in a conforming location. It hasn't changed since the beginning, correct?
Yeah, I mean, I think that that's the point from the letter that we sent out to you that for me hasn't been addressed completely in regard to the full mass and scale. You know, I think that what you've done with the joist seat is an incredible step in the right direction. But I know I've shared with you that I still think that the way this sits on the property and occupies the width is to me not in keeping with the agricultural overlay district. So,
Okay, thank you. Does anybody else have anything for the applicant or would like to make any other comments?
I'm comfortable with it. I would have liked to have seen the two punched windows on the west elevation that flank the master suite. Those two. Hang on, go back to the 3D model. It's a little hard to judge by that. It's not really, just so everyone knows properly, like go to the other one. There you go. It's not properly rendered that the house is not, the glazing won't look like that. I would have preferred to have seen those two small windows up in the gable there. You see that to the right and the left. And
Yeah.
I would prefer to see those gone, but otherwise I'm
yeah, and to be clear, the left one is a window, the other one is just a punch out.
so
Correct.
otherwise, comfortable with it.
I'm comfortable with it too. It's a tortured lot, and I think they've done the best that they can do.
Yeah, me too.
Well, I appreciate the applicants and you in particular, Mr. Manier, your goodwill and, good faith efforts to work with our board on reducing the mass and scale of this, because as I read in our opening statement, our job is to be protecting the open space. And while this is a crazily shaped lot, I think there's still, it's built out as much as it can be pretty much. And I think that's part of where I have difficulty with it, is that we're just filling these agricultural overlay lots with structures. And that wasn't the intention of the law, wasn't to develop them to their fullest potential. And I know that you're answering to a client and you can only do what your client will, yield to in terms of what your suggestions are. And you're the interface between us and them. But I see that some modifications have been made and I thank you for those. But to my mind, the whole thing is the mass and scale is still too large for this area. So I think maybe at this point we should just make a motion. I don't think that we're going to get any further with this.
Diane, do you have anything? Did you have anything else?
No, I think they've done what they can, given all the circumstances. The house doesn't look so sprawling anymore. I think it has.
Well, it's a nearly 4,000 square foot house.
Well,
Yeah, it's not.
That's pretty typical.
It's not.
Well,
so big.
yes, perhaps it is going toward what is becoming the typical, but that's not to say that it is in keeping with the agricultural overlay district and the
Yeah, I
intents of
think
the
that's-
agricultural overlay district. So
I think that's really the point that we keep coming up against time and again is, what is the intent of the ag overlay? Is it to, create big sprawling houses? Is it to,
I thought it was to protect,
excuse me?
I thought it was to protect the
Also
farmland.
protect the to protect the agricultural land and by not developing the entire piece. I mean, there are supposed to be portions of the land that are not developed. That's kind of the point of the law, the regulation. And in an instance like this, if you just go back to the survey, if you would please, Will, there's, and I understand that this lot is crazy, shaped like a necktie.
Yeah.
There's not much. The only thing you could do to preserve more land is just shrink the whole thing down a little bit, just shrink it down considerably, which I don't think we're going to get that from this applicant. I'm not throwing in the towel, but I think,
Well, so far we have not gotten that.
I think we've had
persistently
several
asked for that, and that hasn't happened.
several meetings and several, submissions, and there have been modest concessions made, and I get it, but I can't, anyway, I don't know what more to do. I feel as though we've asked, and this is what we're going to get. So I don't know, David, do you have any advice? I mean, to my mind, we should just vote on this, and people that want it can say yes, and people that don't think it's any good can say no. So
I mean, I would ask the applicant, their representatives, if what their position is. Eric, do you have anything to say? Or?
Yeah, if I could, David, thank you. Good evening, everybody. Eric Brown, Acting Partners for the, hey, everybody. It was interesting I knew Mary Gardner very well. And so it's fascinating. It's wonderful. Thank you for approving it, because I live near there, and driving by, it breaks your heart to watch it just go down into the ground. On this, I just wanted to, if I may, for the record, just read into the record the standard for the disapproval of an application in this location. So that's in an ag overlay district, excuse me. That's 255-760A8. The basis for disapproval. Only the applicant's failure to take reasonable account of the considerations set forth in 255-710 and in this section shall permit disapproval of a proposal. Then it goes on to say how that particular standard for disapproval does not apply in the case of historic districts or historic structures. And as you guys have done tonight on your historic projects, you can see that there's an entirely different set of
criteria. Yeah.
I don't know how this can be voted down and still be in conformance with the standard that is specific for this particular class of development. And I agree, Esperanza, I understand, and Kathy too, I understand the goals that you guys have, and I don't necessarily disagree with them, but I think part of the problem here is that the tools in this part of the code are not sufficient to accomplish what you guys want to do. And I think that reflects in the comments. I've watched everybody, you guys have struggled to sort of express what is it that we're trying to do here? You guys want to have more open space. Some of the other members have been concerned, just about the size of the house. I don't disagree with any of that, but I think for applicants, and if I, without, being as respectful as I can with the board, the tools that the code has given you in this case are not necessarily up to the standard that you want. So thinking about this today, I thought maybe this is an occasion where the town board needs to apply, for instance, a GFA limiting, a limitation on here that's different from the, because right now GFA is regulated solely, you do the lot area formula, and that's what happens. Maybe in situations where you're developing residences in agricultural overlay, there needs to be some other formula to make the houses smaller. Maybe there needs to be regulations that speak specifically to roof line and massing. I mean, I understand what you're trying to achieve. The problem is in this particular part of the code, there are not a whole lot of tools that you guys can point me to and say, okay, it's too big, it's too wide, it's too, if the code said that,
yep,
and was
From your lips to the town
numerically.
board's ears.
Well,
Yes.
but for instance, when I come before you guys on historic.
You're making the
districts-
case for us.
Well, no, I'm saying that, yeah, I am.
You
Because I
are,
think, for
yes.
instance, in historic districts, when I come before you guys, it's easier for the applicant, and I think, again, not to speak for you, but for you, because there's, when someone
There's
comes in with an
standards, yes,
historic district house, I can go and say, okay, so here's the standards for the district. This is what we need to look at
Right.
when we design. That is not the case here for this class of development. And, but my legal position is that I think in this particular case, we have met the standard, and to deny it, would be an arbitrary and capricious act. And that's.
Okay, well, thank you for your
Thank you, Eric.
opinion.
So, respectfully, as the counsel for the board, I take a different view on that. As the board knows, I think you can point to the case of manager versus the Southampton Village Board of Architectural Review, where specifically the Architectural Review Board had determined that they were unable to consider the size of the structure in a historic district because it met the zoning, and they relied on the case of Ferrara. And this court said that, however, Ferrara is not so broad and does not preclude the board from considering size. Rather, it merely holds that the board cannot reject an application solely because of its size. So moreover, the property in Ferrara was not in a historic district, as that review was based on village code, which does not include the same language or criteria as a historic district. In this case, the board is specifically authorized to consider the scale of proposed new construction in relation to the property itself, surrounding properties, and the neighborhood. The respondents contend that scale is not the same thing as size or square footage, but scale necessarily requires a consideration of the size of a structure in relation to other things. Thus, the board may consider the size of the proposed dwelling as it relates to the property itself, surrounding properties, and the neighborhood. So this is an agricultural overlay district, not a historic district, but the salient point is that the board is charged with considering mass, scale, and assurance of harmony. So an ag overlay is the only class of property in East Hampton that we have authority over, or the board has jurisdiction over residences. And
Right.
The purpose of the ag overlay use is to preserve the agricultural and agrarian charm of the town through open spaces. So,
Right. Well, thank you for that, counsel. Though anyway, so I think we should just move on this. Frankly, I don't know that we can send it back yet again.
I think we should too.
I think we should
I'm
too.
fine with moving.
Okay, so
I'm sorry, Madam Chair, I didn't, I rambled around so much that I didn't say, yes, we would like you to vote on it. That I think
so
was the
someone want to
original-
make a motion,
Well,
please?
it's my application.
Yeah, okay.
I make a motion to approve the application as most recently submitted.
May I have a second, please?
Second.
All in favor?
Hi.
Aye.
Opposed?
I'm opposed.
I'm opposed too. Okay, so
3-2. It's carried.
off you go. Happy holidays.
Thank you.
All
Happy
right,
holidays.
next up, View 49 LLC, Suffolk County Tax Map number 300-196-1-21.
Yeah, she skipped.
You were outside. We're
I
going
jumped into
back.
ag overlay so that I could be here for those rather than have to leave. Okay, so we've got some technical problems with this. I'm sorry to report to you, although Esperanza, I will let
Oh, yeah, that's
you,
mine.
it's Esperanza show tonight. Could you just state your name for the record, sir?
Louis D'Alessia. I'm a
Okay.
project manager.
Okay, hi, Mr. D'Alessia, welcome.
Thank you.
Okay, Esperanza will begin this, but we're not going to give you a full review tonight because it turns out that your generator is in violation of the noise code. So we cannot approve your generator as
With
proposed.
the acoustical enclosure that's specified?
yes, the noise shield still comes in at, geez, I think it was So our nighttime standard is 55, right? Or 50.
So that's, unfortunately, we can't approve anything that isn't code compliant. So you would have to demonstrate additional baffling to bring that bring that feature of your project into compliance with the code. Also, I understand that there's a wall or something like that,
Closure.
an enclosure that we would need specs for also.
No, there's no additional enclosure outside of the spec of the generator. So the generator is as tall as it was because there's 12 inches of acoustical enclosure, the heaviest sound enclosure that's sold on that generator.
Right. Well, then it may be that you're gonna have to get a different generator because it doesn't meet our code, our noise code, which, we've just kind of figured out. So
And that was 50 decibels?
in the evening, 50 at night, 65 during the day.
And that's section 185 of the East Hampton Town Code.
185?
Yes.
So
There's
I
three.
don't know if you want to try to,
And
anything else. I mean, I think
like
at this
landscaping
point-
screening doesn't come into consideration?
It doesn't buffer noise. You can, the
Not sufficiently. anyway, I
plants
would
don't
imagine.
buffer sound. That's not a sound buffer.
Okay.
It has to be something that, it's got to be some kind of baffling, some kind of structure that will actually buffer the sound.
Okay, we'll review it. I mean, our latest presentation is the sink at 18 inches, so we'll
Yeah, I mean,
figure it out with our
yeah, see if
engineers.
you can find, yeah, okay,
Mhm.
and then you can come back.
There were two parts to this application. So I have a letter that we were approved and rescinded, and it was going to be rectified on this hearing.
So council, I don't know, I think perhaps you can best explain.
So our other questions too are we needed the specs and specifications for the proposed air conditioning units as well.
We did submit them at a point. We've been here for a year and approaching 2 months.
So do you want to say right now you're comfortable that they all comply with the noise decibels?
Yeah, it's a heat pump. I mean, it's
Okay.
I can't imagine you can buy one now that isn't. We've been through the ringer on this one. We feel like we've done everything we can every step of the way. We've been here for so long that it's hard for any of us to remember all the details. I came here traveling so heavy, thinking I had everything possible. In the past, it seemed like condensers were of no concern. So we weren't talking about the heights. We said the locations were fine.
Of the AC units, you mean?
Yeah, I mean,
Oh, no,
in a
that
year and a
was
half,
just
we
something
haven't been beating up condensers and saying,
No, that was just a point that
Okay.
council just,
Yeah, I understand that it's been a long process, but part of that has been the way your paperwork has been submitted and that there was some confusion. We have a protocol here that once you've had an approval, if you want to change anything to the approval, then you have to submit a modification, and the modification has to clearly state what's different from as built or proposed. And we got really, we went down the rabbit hole on that for a lot
we've
of reasons.
absolutely always said as built proposed. We submitted
Yes,
an
I
application
understand
that-
your point. I understand your point. I'm just trying to tell you that we really can't act on this tonight because your generator does not comply. So, David, is there some, we've been advised that we should wait to see what you come back with the generator, because it may affect other portions of your building, other portions of your
Well,
footprint.
at the very least, if you have to get a smaller generator or change it because you can't get sufficient buffering or whatever
Noise reduction.
the term is, it will be, it might be in a different location or
But I understand, and
so it's one project. It's all being developed at the same time. It's not like, you guys through a clerical kind of mishap had two different applications for the one thing. Like,
well, isn't that how the incomplete letters have been responded to? I mean, I'm getting
it
separate.
went along that way, but it's not. It's all part of the same development, right? This is all kind of technically one job, more or less, right? The generators are to serve the house that you're proposing to build. Right? So they're all linked. So if we're possibly going to require you to do something that requires a change survey, I'd like to have a resolution that refers to one survey rather than approving something today, then having you come back and get a different survey, and then having that approval refer to a different survey. It just seems cleaner, and we'd avoid the problems we've had so far as if we keep them both together.
That's a little bit of what we're trying to do here, is to merge it into one unit. The reason it was two different things is because that's how you applied for it. And that was a clerical error, on our end and your end. So we just have, we're trying to streamline this and get it to a point where it can be approved.
Okay, and I don't want to waste your time, but honestly, it became two applications because we've been doing this for so long. I mean, at one point it was approved, and then at the very last minute, verbally approved, not approved in lighting.
There's no such thing as a verbal approval.
Okay, the board considered everything that we presented to be agreeable. And then at the end, we said, well, what about the exterior lighting? Exterior lighting was approved on record, but we were held up because the exterior lighting wasn't presented in our application, even though it was already decided upon.
So what is your point? What do you want me to do with that information?
I feel like I'm presenting many things at this point because it's just been such a long running debate.
Right.
Back
And is there something about what I'm explaining to you that we cannot act on this tonight because it's not code compliant with our noise ordinance? Is there some part of that I can help you understand better? I recognize that you're frustrated, and I know that you're trying to get someplace for your client, but this, some of this is self-imposed, and I can't, we're trying to work through it too, and we're doing our best to help you. And if it doesn't feel like that, I'm sorry, but that's where we are with this right now. So, I don't know that we can do anything further.
I do want to say again that if I'm getting separate incomplete letters, it seems like we're talking about
how recently have you received two separate
hearing?
What date was that?
I'm not going to pull out the big binder.
Yeah, no, it's too
10/13/22 was
labor-intensive.
our last.
Just the only thing we're.
Part of the problem too is the property was sold and you commingled the names of the applicants and the LLCs that owned it. So it was.
Yeah, I mean that, you have to understand that for our record keeping, we needed proof of the title because we didn't even know who the actual owner was. So that's a big record keeping gap. So that was part of the reason that you have been held up, is because that wasn't provided to us in a substantive way quickly enough to move you along more quickly. I'm sorry if this feels last minute, but we are just prohibited from approving anything that is not code compliant, and your generator is not code compliant. So if there's nothing more that you can offer in terms of how you can make your application code compliant, I think we should move along.
And a structure to make it code compliant that's under 4 foot would be subject to your review.
David?
What are you talking about?
The generator.
Whatever fencing
Generator needs a building permit. And so anything that gets a building permit in the agricultural overlay is subject to the ARB review.
Okay.
And
this proposed generator right now, we can't approve. So the proposed generator that means the survey is not going to be, is inaccurate. We can't approve something that has that proposed generator on it.
Whatever screening we come up with, is that subject to ARB review if it's under 4 foot?
In this case.
If it's connected to the generator, if it's, additional like a wall or an enclosure that's part of it that's connected to the.
But if it's fencing around the generator?
Okay.
It would depend on the design.
Because a pool equipment typically would just get a small wooden fence, and that's an acoustical baffle.
Yes, but so this has to be something that complies with the noise.
Right, and
so you're saying that a 4 foot fence right now that's going to solve the noise problem?
I'm asking if the ARB would then say, well, let's talk about this fence and what it looks like, or I just have to come back and say this is the 4 foot fence that baffles the noise.
Anything that you propose to the board should be as detailed as possible, because you're kind of answering your own question. If you want us to have, if it's an area that we have review on, we have to know the materials, we have to know the transparency, we have to know the height, we have to know all of that. So in this instance, I think you're going to have to hire a sound expert to try and help you baffle this generator sufficiently to bring you within the noise.
And I'm just asking, does that sound expert's work subject to ARB review if it's 4 foot or less?
Yes, because it depends. It's got to be. It's not about the height of the thing. It's about how much.
It's about the
sound, the
decibels.
decibel units.
It seems there are two issues. There's the sound and meeting the code, and that I don't think we actually have jurisdiction of whether something like meets, of whether it's compliant to, you would need a professional certification, like some sort of, something to convince, probably, I think the building inspector, that's actually, I think, a building inspector issue, not an ARB issue. It's something the ARB, I think, should I would consider. And then it's also, it's a structure on the property, regardless if it's 4 feet or less, it's a structure.
Right.
So it's subject to our review. Right?
And I would say that if it's being used as baffling, it's connected to the structure that requires the building permit. So it's arguably part of the generator if it's connected to it and it's used for sound enclosure.
But that we would have to have a letter from a certified professional stating
absolutely.
that it is.
Right.
So.
So just to be clear, council, there's no way that we can move forward with approving any part of the modifications that the applicant had submitted and that actually have been, some of them executed on the building itself. That
our approval would have to refer to the survey, right? That as you know, in the plans that are included in the ARB file, and the survey is dated. The survey needs to be changed because of the proposed generator. It's currently depicted.
Yeah,
on
it's
it.
all.
So
yeah, I mean, this is
in order to keep it sort of, I guess the point is in order to keep not run into more issues
where we
with
got in trouble the first time.
a tangle
Yeah.
is to keep it all together. I guess that's the crux of the matter. So for housekeeping and for everybody's sanity and clarity, it's all going together.
I understand.
Does that make sense?
It
You know,
does.
I'd love to help you with
Yeah, in
pushing
writing, I
forward
have-
one section of this, but then we might run into issues.
If I could, John Woodsmith, the survey would reference a generator. It doesn't reference anything, whether it's above the noise code or less than noise code. So at this point in time, it's just a block on a survey. It could represent anything. You're not approving the survey, but there's nothing saying a generator is there, couldn't allow the approval of the pool house at Cabana to get underway while we bring on engineers or change the generator. It's just a notation on the survey. You're not approving the generator.
Well,
the survey is supposed to depict the structures on the property, right? It's supposed so if that ends up having to be moved or modified or something else comes up, that's no longer a current survey.
Yeah, so what if, okay, so you decided to relocate the pool house, but then you have to end up relocating the generator for whatever reason, and then that sort of puts a wrench in your plans for the proposed relocation of the pool house. You know, like this has gone through so many
But then wouldn't we-
iterations that I guess that council is advising that it all be kept into one.
for that what if, I mean, we would be back here. We're giving the client a house with a C of O. We're not just going to give them a
it sounds like the issue is if we were to move forward and we were to approve other things, we would essentially it would go on record, a survey that was submitted for this hearing. And then the building department would reference the survey and they could mistakenly think that we approved a generator when we didn't because the generator's on the survey.
And
Am I right?
Also, too, in our conversations and the letters in the file, it kind of seems like the house and the features of the house are dependent upon having that specific generator, that it's necessary for your client's wine collection to be maintained at a certain temperature all the time. And that's the generator that you need to have. And right now, that generator isn't able to be approved under our town code. So it's possible that then that would trigger some changes to the wine storage or something if you can't have that generator, and you, as per the letter that was provided from the wine storage facility.
But whatever that is, isn't that our job as a builder to deliver a house that works with the C of O.
It's our
I
job
mean,
to approve it, though. We have to know what we're approving.
the architectural review board preserving the harmonious vistas on the ag overlay. We're talking about generator decibels.
Yeah, but it's part of where the generator is going in the ag overlay, isn't it? But in other words, we can't approve the generator that you are proposing, the 11-foot generator, because of the decibel level, because it doesn't comply with code. So, I mean, we can't approve it.
I guess I thought the point of the generator spec was for mass and height and how big it is.
This
There's a
came
lot-
to my attention today.
Well, just there's a lot of things I could do with that generator that aren't going to pass code. But I'm not going to do that because I want to build a product that meets electrical code and the East Hampton town comes in and gives us a C of O. So of course we would do whatever we need to meet an East Hampton Building Department town code.
Right. But we can't approve that without seeing it.
I think it's the largest generator we've ever looked at in the time we've been on the board. The generator is huge.
Okay, I understand that. From my experience, it's by no means. It's a good sized generator, but we've done much larger.
He's
but-
telling us what we've seen.
Yeah.
And that's, and that's not counting all the generators that probably have been installed without our approval.
Right.
Before the generator issue came up, the decibels, was there anything else that the board had come up with as far as suggestions or?
It's concerned too about the proposed fencing that's kind of at the bottom of that. Is that within the envelope?
Can I just ask, what else is on the agenda? We've talked about the agenda, whether we can review, what else, just a quick summary, are we being asked to review tonight besides the generator? Is there anything that can be approved for the applicant that is perhaps not dependent on the survey, such as sconces, something, or
That's what
maybe path lights? Is there anything that we can review tonight that is not dependent on this issue of the generator?
That's what I asked earlier, but I think what council is advising is that we should keep it all in one approval.
So let's wrap this up and move on.
I'm going.
Yeah, I
by
mean,
what
I
he's
defer to
saying.
David,
Yes. And with regard to the fence, I'm going to refer to the property card, which says, let's see, no buildings or structures except fences shall be constructed within 10 feet of an ag easement boundary. All buildings and structures on lots except driveways and utility lines, but including other accessory buildings and structures, shall conform to building envelopes on lots. And any greater setbacks for pool, tennis courts, et cetera, shall apply. So that fence around the perimeter that council has just pointed out apparently cannot be there
Can you just say
on the property line.
Except
No,
fences?
no, all buildings and structures. So no buildings or structures except fences shall be constructed within 10 feet of an ag easement boundary. That's one.
Yes.
Except fences.
Yes.
Yes. But then all buildings and structures on lots except driveways and utility lines, but including other accessory buildings and structures, shall conform to building envelopes.
It can't be both. I mean, it says. except-
Yes, it can. Sure, it's a structure that can't be put outside the building envelope.
The fence is exempt.
Yeah, we've been looking at this for months.
I don't know, council, tell
and
me,
we-
does
we
that,
feel that fences is absolutely not structures. It comes up multiple times in the code. A fence?
It's we issue building permits for fences.
Above 4 feet.
Yeah,
This is 4 foot and below.
so our fences are black or green landscape fencing, 4 foot or less,
4 feet or less.
not subject to
Okay.
ARB review.
and then one other thing that I think, and please confirm, Will or council, you have on your application the 6-foot pedestrian gates. my instinct is, and I think this is accurate, is that these are exempt from our review anyway.
Okay.
So you don't need to have them on for us to review. One less thing.
It's amazing.
Although I would recommend that they be a little more translucent.
Thank you.
That's all. And I think that's it. Anything else? Will?
No, I think that's it.
And just making sure the call box for the driveway gate, if there is one, is less than 4 feet?
Of course.
Has to be car window height.
Oh, you never know. People have tall cars. They do. Is there anything else, David?
Okay, let's go.
All right. So I guess, does that give you enough information? I'm sorry that we can't do anything today.
Yeah, I mean, for the record, I have the letter that says it's going to be, we regret that we rescinded and approved and then rescinded, and it's going to be rectified, and it is not. So it certainly feels less second. But it's my job. It's not my house. And I couldn't imagine talking about this tomorrow. But
Well, I did speak about this with Ann Glennon, the town's principal building inspector.
Mhm.
She said that we cannot approve this with the generator issue. So it's, in addition to me agreeing with her, it's also that's her assessment of it.
okay, I appreciate your time. It's just, it
Sorry, we
feels
didn't
certainly-
have that information when we sent that incomplete letter, if you understand that, right?
I mean, it feels very last minute. It's been a long time. But I'm still here to argue, so
All right.
thank you.
Okay.
You want to
So
go back and pick up the one we
Yep.
skipped?
we're going to go back to,
Beach Garden Center?
yes, so number 4. So next on the agenda, we're going back to change to commercial is Pete's Garden Center, tax map number 300-49-1-13.3. And this is Diane.
Okay, this Pete's Garden Center, this has been before us several times over the last year. And the last thing that was determined, that we favored the agricultural fence on the Euclid side of the property, and we recommended stockade fencing. And so all the fencing issues have been resolved, and they have, as you can see in their pictures, the only thing that is left, oh, Tara, do you want to come forward?
Oh, yes, please.
Sorry.
Sorry, I forgot to ask you to come up.
The only thing that is,
Just one moment, if you can just,
I'm Tara
State your
Burke from
name.
Lighthouse Land Planning here for Peter Joyce at Pete's Garden Center.
the only thing that we suggested, and it was a suggestion, was that they put landscape screening in front of the retaining wall that came out of this board. But this is a garden center, and they contend, and I agree actually, that it would be very confusing in season when that whole lot is filled with planting material and trees and evergreens, you know, what is for sale and what is part of the look. And they also contend that it would take up retail space, and the space is very, very limited. And confusion of what's for sale and what's not for sale. I tend to agree with their reasoning, and I think they have basically they've made so many improvements on this property, and it is such a small property, and they've done the best with it they could. I don't see any problem.
okay, so my understanding is this was before planning last night for site plan approval, but didn't make it on.
So we had the public hearing last week. And then when the planning department and I had figured out the timeline initially, we had thought it was going to be on for resolution for last night, but the resolution wasn't written in time. So it's going to be on for the January 11th meeting. But their resolution will likely be adopted before your resolution is adopted. So, you know, they're still on track. There was nobody at the public hearing. There's been nothing submitted to the file. The planning board's happy with where we're at. no one anticipates
Okay.
any changes. It's
They
really
covered
just
that in
a
a
formality wrap up.
recent letter.
Okay. Okay. So really all we're looking at is what we're seeing in the
Yeah.
pictures.
I think, the fencing, everything else has been, everything else we suggested and then has been in question for the past, I think this is the fourth time it's been before us. They've considered and taken care of.
Okay. Any,
I'm fine with it.
okay. So would you like to make a motion?
Yes, I would like to make a motion that we accept
And we
this.
can, sorry, we can make a motion, right, David?
Yes.
Yes. Okay.
Yes, good. I would like to make a motion that we accept this application as presented.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay. You're all set?
Thank you very much.
All right. So,
Next.
I think we all have the revised agenda, right? That has, NGEH tanks and equipment building. Is that right?
What?
Just
I
one
thought-
moment.
Wait, I thought he
Sorry.
was next.
No, just one moment, because we had to add this, yes. It's just one thing. And it was from the, last week's, National Grid application.
Okay.
Okay. But do we have anyone here for that? Oh, okay, Jean, sorry. Thank you.
Those have those hard copies. Want me to give those to?
Do we have it on the digital file?
You should have it. I had sent them, but I said I'd bring the hard copies anyway, just.
Okay.
Out of an abundance of caution.
Yes.
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 I
exactly.
wouldn't mind having one just to have it in front of me because I can hardly see the screen. Thank you. So these are, okay, so that was the only,
So, yeah.
yes. Oh, yes, I'm sorry. Thank you, Julie. This is NGEH Tanks and Equipment Building, tax map number 300-185-2-2 at 3 Cove Hollow Road. And we have Jean Galante from Lori Wilshire LPS. So since Kathy is not here, I can't say anything about this, but I think we were just waiting for you to submit the elevation for the equipment building.
Correct.
Okay. Do we have a picture of that, Will?
Yeah.
Or is this eight? Oh,
I know you had this the last time, which was to indicate the color and the trim.
Yes, it's laurel green and Arctic white are the colors on the equipment building.
Right.
And then
Oh, here's
the
the
elevation.
specs.
The elevation, yeah, and it's a little faint, but you have a copy of it there. It's also on one of the pages of which is what we didn't see last week, on one of the pages in the plans from Parkline.
Okay, so it's the equipment shed, the laurel green siding, white trim, and then it's got all the depictions of the doors and windows and everything. Everybody's fine with this? Okay. I guess I make the motion. All right, so I make a motion to approve the application as submitted. Wait, that's second.
Second.
All in favor?
Hi.
Aye. Okay.
Okay,
Thank you. Any
thanks.
opposed? No? All right, now we can go. Thank you for your patience. This, so is this number 515 Great Oak Way?
No, 7 Lion Head Rock
No,
Road.
Great Oak Way
Oh,
has
that was,
been
sorry.
removed, although I have no idea why they've done all that.
All right, so I have to read those in though then. Just one moment. So Great Oak Way, East Hampton LLC, tax map number 300-73-3-1.7 has been administratively removed or withdrawn rather. And number 6, Juan Guaman, tax map number 300-144-1-61 has also been administratively withdrawn. Number 7, Corey Rose Manson, tax map number 300-78-2-4.1 has also been administratively withdrawn. And so we have taken care of ag overlay. And now we're at number 11. James and Mary Beth Lamont,
Yes.
tax map number 300-24-6-2, 7 Lionhead Rock Road. This is Chip.
So I visited your property 2 days ago and I'm going to talk about it and then you can talk about it.
Okay.
Okay. So this is an application to proceed for a C of O for a house on a 0.45 acre lot in Clearwater Beach. The applicant was originally before this board 5.5 years ago in 2017 for fencing and gate issues. An extension of time was granted by us in December 2021. This is a completely fenced in and highly gated property in a neighborhood of mostly open yards, especially front yards. Per our 2017 resolution, which we would probably not be in favor of today, but it stands. The perimeter fencing is now in compliance with the original resolution, with 8-foot front fencing behind the back, with 8-foot fencing behind the back facade of the house, and 6-foot fencing to the sides and to the front of the house. The property has a semicircular driveway with 2 sets of driveway gates. Those gates are 6 feet tall, which is in compliance with our resolution, and they have 10 by 10 sort of square wooden checkerboard openings. Now, what is not in compliance are things that were not in the resolution. This driveway gate posts, which support these gates, are over 6 feet tall. They cannot be over 6 feet tall. I measured them at 6.5 feet. So the posts have to be cut down that support the driveway gates. You've also added 2 light fixtures on top of each set of gates, one to the left and one to the right. Those light fixtures exceed the 6 feet and they need to be removed. And they're also not dark sky compliant.
I'm sorry, they are dark compliant.
Oh, well, then
that's the way we put them in.
Well, the height's a problem. They exceed 6 feet. Nothing there can be higher than 6 feet. Where the approved deer fencing is restricted to 6 feet on the sides and the front of the house, it is held up by 8-foot tall metal posts. These posts need to be cut down to 6 feet. And then lastly, and this is what Will has up on, there was no mention of interior gates on the resolution. Adjacent to both the front right-hand side of the house and the front left-hand side of the house are 8-foot tall wooden gates as pictured here, but they only butt up to 4-foot high wire fencing. So the gates really don't provide any sort of protection because the fence next to them is only 4 feet tall. On the left side, it's a single gate. On the right side, it's a double gate. These gates serve no purpose in terms of protecting you from deer because you already have perimeter fencing and now you have 4-foot fencing adjoining them. If you'd like to talk about it, please.
Yeah, you brought me back to 2017, which is, we thought we could build a fence, that there was no problem. And we were also told we could build an 8-foot fence.
By who?
Bad
I'm
advice.
sorry.
Bad advice from a landscape
From a contractor.
contractor. As soon as we found that out, we went back to the drawing board, and there were a number of steps in between. And one of them was that we could only build fencing up halfway up the house or up to the house and not beyond it. So we started to do work on that. And then finally we got something that came through that showed that we could build in front of the house with a 6-foot gate, which we did.
The driveway gate, right?
Gate. And 6 feet around.
Right, which you did.
We took down the wire fence and put up the mesh fence, which you asked. But we had, when we only had approval to go as far as we did, and having started on the 8-foot gates, we put these 2 gates, they're at the side of the house. They're at the front side.
The front facade.
And the 4-foot fencing goes to the side. We have a dog that tends to try to escape. She chases deer all the time. We thought that this would be a good stop for her. We liked the gates that we had put up. We consider them art, functional art for us. You may not agree, but that's the way we think of them. And we like the look of them. They don't, as you said, there's a 4-foot fence next to it. It's in compliance with everything I've heard tonight. So we would like to keep those gates.
Right,
So
the gates aren't in compliance. That's the
In your
issue.
resolution, which is not a resolution we would ever write today,
No.
but we're honoring it because it was written to you in 2017.
Right.
You're allowed to have 8-foot fencing behind the rear facade of the house. And then you're allowed to have 6-foot fencing from the rear facade of the house to the street, okay?
Which is what we do. But
Which is
this is within the property here.
Yeah, obviously, but this 8-foot gate is in an area where we only approve 6-foot fencing. So I don't think we're going to approve this 8-foot gate. If you wanted to make it 6 feet and cut it down, that would probably be okay. The board would have to talk about it. But you just can't go putting 8-foot gates in an area where we've approved 6-foot height fencing.
Well, that you would, I
Well, you
think,
can
have
see
them
them
as of
also.
right, I think, would be the 6 feet. I'm not sure. Do we have a survey for this?
There's no survey for this. Okay.
We have an old survey, but.
What?
But nothing that depicts all the structures.
So
Because that way we'd be able to see where everything is located and
Okay.
better know.
Well, the resolution is incredibly specific to where these.
No, but I mean, for the pedestrian gates in particular.
Yeah.
Well, they're
Because if
equal,
they're if they are
more than
50
feet
feet,
back.
then they could do 6 feet as a right. We could approve them at 8 feet. That's the discretion of the board.
So I have a question for David, which has to do with a situation it sounds like we're in, which is go to an applicant's property and we check to see if what has been built conforms to the resolution. There is something within the discipline of fences and gates that has been built that is not related to the resolution. Does that hold up the CO? That is our approval of that resolution. Like if there's something that is not complying, that's new, but is not related to the resolution, does that affect the resolution?
Generally, no. The board could approve the structure that was authorized in the resolution if it matches the approval, and then the building department would go out to do an inspection and they'd observe the other structure on the property that requires ARB approval that's not part of it and say, hey, like this also needs ARB approval.
Yeah.
So we'd have to come back. But it's not, if the applicant wants to do it one structure at a time and do 5 different applications, that's up to them. I think it makes the most sense to do it all at once, but
it's the point I'm making to the board is that sometimes you go on come on these site visits and you see something that is not related to what's on the application, but doesn't comply. That falls under code compliance, which is not ARB, correct? Even though we may want to address it in the meeting.
Well, but okay, so let's just forget about these gates for a second. You have 8-foot high metal posts where you're approved for 6-foot high fencing. Those posts have to be cut down. Here they are right here.
As soon as it's warm enough, I'll go out and cut them down.
Okay, and then the other thing is you have approval for 6-foot high driveway gates, and they are, set into 6.5-foot high posts. Those posts, the gates in the post have to be conforming at 6 feet. You can't have higher posts and lower gates.
And you said they have light fixtures on
They have
top?
light fixtures on them, which weren't approved. If they're
On top?
On
So it
top of
adds to the height?
each post on either side, one post on the left. So you're exceeding the height restrictions there. So those light fixtures need to come off.
And in other words, we really can't proceed with the CO approval because it's not in compliance.
Problems around outside of, these gates will be a problem for you, I think, at some point, unless they're more than 50 feet back from the road. I don't know, that the house is pretty close to the road. I don't know if it's more than.
The house is probably about 40.
Yeah. So then these gates are not equal to the front facade of the house. They're about 4 or 5 feet behind the front facade of the house. But the way your thing was written, it doesn't talk about the front facade of the house. It talks about the rear facade of the house, which we don't look at things that way anymore. So bottom line is, I think you need to cut down your iron post to 6 feet, and you need to cut down your driveway posts to 6 feet, and you need to take the light fixtures off.
You got to comply with the resolution.
Yeah.
For us to approve it, it's got to comply with the resolution. Additionally, there are things that the building inspectors.
No. Yeah, if we brought the posts down to under 6 feet, could we use the light fixtures?
Sure, as long as the top of the light fixtures is no higher than 6 feet.
No, we'd need to review the light fixture.
The light fixture, and the light fixture is dark,
Guy compliant.
We
would need to,
And
I have a
and
picture of it. Oh, I have a
Yeah,
pic-
we wouldn't.
Will, do you have a
houses
picture of
around
it?
me, when I walk my dog
Driveway
at 10
gates?
o'clock at night, the houses around me have so much light
So
on
there's-
them.
there's the-
Yeah,
We
but
don't care
that's,
about that.
we're dealing with your home and,
Well,
and we
back,
would
Will,
need,
back.
we
This
would
is-
need specifications for
Yeah.
it. If you have something from, if you got it online or a receipt or something that would indicate
The light fixtures.
the light fixture, yes.
I mean, you're gonna have to bring your entire,
I mean, I don't know how you're going to,
I mean, if I were you, I don't want to play design. I would just get another fixture and put it mounted on the post,
on the side or.
you know? Therefore, you don't have to modify your whole gate, assuming does the gate come,
But the posts
Gates
have to,
both open, yeah.
the posts both have to come down also.
Yeah, oh, you could, so in other words, you could mount a dark sky compliant light fixture on the side of each post, you know,
Yeah.
rather than,
therefore,
no,
yeah.
don't go for the height, go for the sides.
Yes.
Therefore, you just cut the top of the post to be in compliance and then you
Yeah.
figure out a way to,
Put
do
something on the, put it on the side.
Right.
right. Now, however,
But that would
what goes
require
on
all of that.
there, you would have to submit to us approval for a light fixture on that. Because you're making a modification that wasn't approved.
Yeah.
So
Before we did this, that we had 2 brick posts which had lights on them. They were probably about this high.
Mm.
And that's why we felt that having the light fixtures on wasn't a problem, since we had those before. Now, granted, they were low, but they were not dark compliant. But we thought that was you know, there was good reason for that. And as I said, you know, I walk my dog to the light of.
You know, I have lights on my driveway that I like also. I think what's happened is we've become much more restrictive since 2017 in approving gates and posts and lights on. And so you benefited from an earlier era when a lot of that stuff was approved and it just isn't approved anymore.
Yeah.
Right. But you did not have approval for the lighting anyway.
Yeah.
So,
So we'll write you a letter that will spell out all the things we
Okay.
mentioned. So,
I was going to ask if you can,
yeah, we'll send it to you.
that,
this
yes.
is very complicated.
Yes, we
Yeah.
send a letter out and that will have everything listed.
Restrictions and
Yes.
guidelines.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes. And if you, I think I'm offering, if you have any further questions with regard to the lighting, that would be addressed to the planning staff. So Will or Eric Shantz can help you with that and you can contact them at the planning office.
Okay.
now here's a question for David again, which is, oh, you have to submit a survey, correct?
Oh, well, that's,
So you'll need to submit a survey. So it's a question for David. Survey comes back to us. Everything the applicant we've been talking about in the resolution complies, but there's a gate or two that's new on that survey. Where does that leave us? That and those gates are
They weren't
fencing.
part of the original approval, then it's just something that, you know, is an unapproved structure on the property that is subject to being cited by code enforcement and requires ARB approval.
So we can accept the survey for purposes of the CO, even if there are new structures on it we haven't approved.
as long as, yeah. I
Yeah,
think
the
so.
requirement is for a current survey, which shows all the structures currently on the property.
I mean, if you wanted to just deal with everything at once, I would cut down those 2 side gates on the side of the houses,
Make them compliant.
make them 6 feet, like the driveway gates.
The internal gates,
The internal.
Yeah, internal gates, yeah.
Yeah, well,
even if they have a sentimental,
Even if they're sentimental, yeah. Well, they'll still be sentimental.
We consider them functional art.
Yeah, yeah.
created by a relative.
Because I don't want to speak for a building inspector, but if those are still there, you're not going to get your C of O until
Yeah,
those.
we had a visit from a building inspector before
Oh,
this, and he said everything is okay except those gates.
okay, yeah, so that's right. Yeah, yeah.
But I wanted to plead the case of the gates because they do serve a purpose for us. And we do think they're
well,
really kind of nifty.
Sir, I think if we had an updated survey that reflected where all these structures are and we knew exactly the location of those pedestrian gates, then it's at the discretion of the board as to whether we can approve them at 8 feet.
If
Okay,
they're more than 50 feet back, they fall into a different category.
Yeah. Yeah, as I said, they're probably 40.
I think
the house is
it's a
set back
short
40.
front yard.
Yeah, but I'm just giving you sort of a
Okay.
glimmer of hope.
Okay, so we will send you a letter that spells all this
Great,
out.
thank you.
Okay, thank you so much.
Christmas hope.
I would just like to say that I've never witnessed this before.
Were you bored to tears?
Very impressive. It's very professional. And it makes me proud to be a citizen here.
Thank you.
Oh,
so
my, that's
much.
nice.
Thank you. Thank you. That's the best gift.
That's the nicest. That's the nicest comment we've had in a long time.
Oh my gosh.
Not all
Yes.
applicants say that.
Yes. I don't think everyone feels the same way you do. But thank you. Okay. So,
Or that's needed.
all right. Okay. So lastly, number 12, Matthew Cantor, tax map number 300-200-2-3.1. This is 12 Beach Lane, Wayne-Scott, and the architect, Sean Leonard is
Sean was here. There he is. You're up.
You're up. I don't have to wait for you, but not used to running the meeting and doing everything. How are you? Thank you for your patience throughout this evening. So I have a feeling we may have a little issue with this, and I'm sorry to be the bearer of bad news. The generator was the holdup, I believe, with the certificate of occupancy, and it was relocated, and I have photographs, and the rubbish bin shed that was relocated is in its spot as indicated. As you may have heard a little earlier, there's a possible decibel level issue, and I'm going to defer to Will or council as far as I think perhaps this generator would require an enclosure.
So it has an enclosure, but unfortunately, it still potentially exceeds the decibel readings at night time. I think it was 61 was the reading, which
61.6.
I don't know if there's additional enclosures that you can add to it or just not run it at night, but
That would be something I would definitely let the client know. But I mean,
yeah,
obviously
we
it
just
cannot be.
can't approve it unless it satisfies the noise standards.
Right.
Which it's close. It's closer than the other one was, but
Well, it's smaller. It's 8 feet versus 11.
Right. So,
And frankly,
all right. So I think then we need to somehow come up with something that would demonstrate that it would get us down to.
Yeah, like a noise mitigation.
So what's the dBA level on this generator?
61.
61?
61.6. It's you can see it on there.
And what are the limitations for the town day and night?
50.
50 at night,
50 at night.
65 during the day.
65 during the day.
So is it possible, I mean, that I'm just curious for my own knowledge that
You could put like a governor
can
on
you
it.
say I mean, it technically meets code during the day, but you can't run it at night.
yeah, but if actually it goes,
The power goes off and it's
that's
at
running
night.
all the time.
Yeah, if it goes out for 2 weeks, they're going to be running it at night.
Yeah,
How would we ever enforce that either?
right. That's like a,
Okay.
It's a, but it's it has a fuel tank to it. So it's
I've heard, I
unlike-
have
unlike-
heard this
Oh, yeah.
generator.
Unlike
It's-
unlike natural gas, which will just keep pumping into the property at a constant rate. This does have a fuel tank, so it will run out of fuel.
Yeah.
Mm.
So out of curiosity,
it's gonna run out of fuel.
is the decibel level at the source or is it at the property line?
So it's cited. This one was from 21. I think it was 21 feet, right? So it was. I think that's 7 meters more or less. But the town code applies from any property line that you take the reading from.
So that's probably our first step is to probably get an accurate reading at the property line.
I think that this is kind of what I was talking to Will about earlier for this one was that it's less than 21 feet away. So it's not like it's going to be more quiet because at 15 feet than 21. So you'd want to move it further back to, I guess, increase the chances of it.
I mean, I'm not trying to help the applicant here, but I'm just sort of curious from my knowledge too. So if one were to put a mass wall of concrete clad it in wood in, on the two property lines there, and you take a reading at the property line, I mean,
yeah, I'm open
you could get certified by an engineer and say the reading of this machine at the property line closest to it was 32 decibels or something.
Can you put a wall clad with wood at where it is? Is there room?
I don't know.
Yes. So what they did was they, this one is sunk in the ground.
Yes.
So it's down.
It doesn't really look like it that much, honestly.
Yeah.
It's just so big. I mean, show the pictures, please.
No.
No, for the benefit of the public and our board.
It is, they did sink it down, so it's not the full height out of the ground. But to your point, where there's a wall where they sunk it, we could in fact
extend it. I see.
But then does it
on the block? Okay.
Then I'm just curious there's a limit to which you can bury it 18 inches. So once you start walling it, doesn't that negate the 18-inch rule? Doesn't violate because that, my understanding, is to ventilate.
Right. That's what I was going to
propane.
say.
So
exactly.
once
you can't enclose it, is what you're saying, at that close a range.
Right.
That was my next question. Right.
Yeah. So if there's an offset and then you were to build a mass wall, clad it nicely or plant around it to deflect the sound. So. Okay.
That's where we are.
So come back to you with something that shows that this is at 50 decibels at the property.
And I think this is a question for David, but I would think that we would need something like whoever meets the minimum standard for a certification, sound engineer, something like that, to certify that certify that reading, a licensed professional.
Oh, that's the rubbish bin enclosure in the front yard that was relocated from just about where the storage shed and the porte cochere is. But the other pictures are the depiction of the Rolls Royce. It is.
Oh. Okay, let's go.
All right, that's it. Thank you. And so we have resolution for Nassau Council of Girl Scouts, tax map number 300-37-2-1 is the only resolution for this evening, and that we've all executed. And so I'm going to make a motion to close the meeting.
Second it.
Second.